The wind came down from the high peaks like the breath of something ancient and pitiless, scouring the ridgeline where Cole Mitchell stood alone. February in the Montana Rockies meant cold that could kill in an hour sky the color of old iron, and a silence so complete it rang in the ears like tinnitus. He sat his horse the way a man does after 40 years in the saddle, loose hips, shoulders, squared weight, centered, reading the weather the way other men read stock tickers. The storm would be a bad one. He'd known it since dawn when the chickadees went quiet and the cattle bunched against the windbreak. Now 3 in the afternoon, the western horizon had gone from gray to black clouds, piling up like burial shrouds. Snow already fell in the high country curtains of white, erasing the peaks. Another hour and it would be here, swallowing the ranch whole. Cole's gelding shifted beneath him, ears swiveling. The radio on his belt crackled. "Boss, you copy," read Coleman's voice rough as river stones. Cole unclipped the radio, thumb on the button. "Copy. Weather Service just upgraded to blizzard warning. Visibility near zero up past Widow's Creek. They're saying don't travel." "Noted. You coming in?" Cole looked west again. Somewhere out there, past the creek, past the line of ponderosa pines bent like old Timin under wind, the federal road snaked toward the highway. Empty country. Nobody stupid enough to be out in this, except the radio crackled again. Different voice, younger, panicked. "Anyone copy? This is Dr. Emma Carter, University of Denver Wildlife Research. Our vehicle went off the road near static, ate the rest. Lost, can't find more static. Need immediate..." The transmission died. Red's voice came back. "You hear that?" "I heard it. She's north of Widow's Creek. That's 20 miles. By the time you get there..." "I know. Boss." Red's tone carried 30 years of friendship, which meant it carried the weight of things unsaid. The fact that Cole was 61, that the cold wasn't kind to old rodeo injuries, that a man alone in a blizzard was a man on borrowed time. "You don't owe some university researcher your life." Cole touched the photo in his shirt pocket. The edges were soft as cloth now from years of handling. His daughter Emma at 17, grinning on her horsewind, in her hair eyes bright with the kind of hope the young mistake for invincibility. She'd died chasing that hope. 8 years this spring. He keyed the radio. "Call search and on rescue. Tell them I'm going out. Give them my coordinates every 20 minutes. If I don't answer, assume the worst." Cole, he clipped the radio back, gathered the reins, and turned his horse north. Behind him, the ranch spread across the valley floor. 2,000 acres of Mitchell land going back 4 generations, buildings that had weathered a century of Montana winter's fences his grandfather strung when barbed wire was a new idea. It would endure without him. The land always endured. The woman on that radio might not. Cole pressed his heels to the gelding's flanks and rode toward the storm. The blizzard hit like a living thing. One moment Cole could see 50 yards, the next he was wrapped in white chaos, wind screaming past his ears, snow driving sideways hard enough to sting through layers of canvas and wool. The gelding's mane whipped back into his face, geese already forming on the animal's whiskers. Temperature dropping fast. He rode on instinct, trusting the horse to feel the trail beneath him, letting muscle memory guide him through country he'd known since childhood. Widow's Creek would be frozen solid, safe to cross. Beyond it, the federal road cut through a narrow canyon, steep sides, no room for error, before climbing toward the high pass. If the university team had gone off the road up there, the odds of finding them were slim. The odds of getting them out alive were worse. The radio stayed silent. Cole's hands went numb inside his gloves. He flexed his fingers, forced blood into them, kept the reins loose so the gelding could pick his own pace. Ice crusted his beard, his eyelashes the brim of his hat. The world shrank to a cocoon of white noise and cold. 20 minutes in, his left hip seized. Old injury from the accident that ended his rodeo career ended more than his career. Truth be told, the pelvic fracture that put him in the hospital for 3 months and made the doctors sit him down afterward for the conversation no man wants to hear. He'd been 53 then. Young enough that the words sterile and irreversible felt like a life sentence. Now at 61, he'd mostly made peace with it. Mostly. Cole shifted his weight, worked the hip joint until the spasm eased, rode on. 30 minutes out, the gelding stopped. Ears forward, nostrils flaring. Cole leaned over the animal's neck, squinting into the white. Nothing. But the horse felt something. "What is it, boy?" The gelding snorted, pawed once. Then Cole saw it, a darker smudge in the whiteness, angular lines that didn't belong to nature. He urged the horse forward. The Jeep lay on its side in a shallow ravine 20 feet off the road, nose buried in a snowdrift. The windshield was spiderwebbed, but intact driver's door sprung open. Fresh snow already covered the tire tracks, but Cole could read the story too fast into a corner black ice vehicle rolled. Recent, maybe an hour. He dismounted, ground-tied the gelding, slid down the embankment. His boots punched through the crust, snow to his knees. He reached the Jeep, looked inside. Empty. Supplies scattered: laptops, cameras, sample cases with university logos, but no people. Blood on the passenger seat, not much, already freezing. He scanned the interior, found a clipboard with names: Dr. Emma Carter, Dr. James Voss, Sarah Chen. 3 people. Cole climbed back out, studied the ground. The wind made it hard, but he found prints, 2 sets leading downhill, toward the creek. They'd walked away. Injured maybe, but mobile. Following the water, which made sense if you were lost. Water led to civilization. Except Widow's Creek didn't lead to civilization. It led to 10 miles of uninhabited wilderness, then a box canyon. Dead end. He followed the tracks. The wind tried to erase them as he walked. Cole moved fast, hip protesting lungs burning cold air. The creek appeared through the snow, a dark vein of water still moving despite the cold. The tracks followed the bank, uneven now, one set dragging. Someone hurt. A quarter-mile down, he found the first body. Male, early 30s, face down in the shallows. Dead. Cole knelt, checked for pulse anyway, found nothing but cold skin. Hypothermia, probably. How long had they been out here? He rolled the man over, Asian features, wedding ring, university ID clipped to his jacket. Dr. James Voss, wildlife ecology. Cole said a quiet prayer and kept moving. 50 yards farther, he found the second person. Female, mid-20s, curled against the boulder, snow already drifting over her legs. He thought she was dead too until he touched her neck and felt the faintest flutter. Hey! He shook her shoulder. Hey, can you hear me? Her eyes cracked open, unfocused. Emma, she whispered. Find Emma. Where is she? Ahead. The woman's lips were blue. She went for help. Told us, stay. But James... Her eyes drifted shut. Cole stripped off his coat, wrapped it around her, lifted her over his shoulder. She weighed nothing. He staggered back to the Jeep, got her inside the shelter of the vehicle, piled blankets from his saddlebag over her. Stay here, he said, though she wasn't conscious to hear it. I'll be back. He climbed back on the gelding and rode into the storm. He found Emma Carter a mile downstream, crawling. She'd fallen through a weak spot in the ice, pulled herself out, and kept going. Her jeans were frozen solid, her coat ripped, one boot missing. She moved on hands and knees, inches at a time, leaving a trail of blood from lacerated palms. Cole was off his horse before it stopped moving. Carter. He knelt beside her. Emma. She looked up. Her face was gray, lips, colorless, eyes dull with the glaze of severe hypothermia, but she was conscious, aware. My team, she said. Her voice was a rasp. I found them, one alive. I need to get you warm. James. Cole shook his head. Something crumpled in her expression, grief that couldn't afford to surface yet, shock pushing it down. She nodded once. He stripped off his remaining scares, wrapped her in his flannel shirt, his sweater, everything he could spare. Then he lifted her onto the horse, climbed up behind her, wrapped both arms around her shaking body. Hold on, he said, and turned the gelding south. The ride back took a lifetime. Emma drifted in and out of consciousness, her head lolling against Cole's chest. He talked to keep her awake, told her about the ranch, about the conservation trust, about anything that came to mind. She murmured responses that might have been words. By the time they reached the guest cabin on the north edge of his property, full dark had fallen, and the blizzard howled like the world ending. Cole half-carried, half-dragged Emma inside, kicked the door shut, got the wood stove roaring. He stripped off her frozen clothes, wrapped her in every blanket he could find, rubbed her limbs to force circulation. She started shaking violently, a good sign. It meant her body was trying to rewarm, and then she was crying, great heaving sobs that shook her whole frame. James, she kept saying. Oh God, James. Cole held her, said nothing, let her grieve. Outside, the wind screamed. When Emma finally slept, Cole called Red on the satellite phone. Got her, guest cabin, hypothermic but alive. One more survivor at the crash site, female critical. Get search and rescue out there. GPS coordinates as follows. He read off the numbers, hung up, and sat by the stove watching Emma breathe. She was young, late 20s, he'd guess, with dark hair plastered to her skull, olive skin pale under the bruising and frostbite. Even unconscious and half frozen, there was something fierce in the set of her jaw. A survivor's face. His daughter Emma had looked like that. Cole rubbed his eyes, felt exhaustion pulling at him. The hip throbbed. His hands ached. He was too old for this kind of heroics. But sitting here watching this woman breathe, feeling the stove's heat push back against the cold, it was the first time in 8 years he'd felt anything close to purpose. He added wood to the fire and stayed awake through the night. Emma woke to sunlight and pain. Every part of her hurt hand, bandaged feet, throbbing ribs, screaming with each breath. She lay in a bed she didn't recognize, buried under quilts in a room built from logs and smelling of wood smoke. Memory came back in fragments, the Jeep rolling, James hitting his head, the cold, the endless cold. James was dead. The grief hit her like a physical blow. She curled onto her side, bit down on the blanket to muffle the sound. 34 years old James had been, married, 2 kids. He'd shown her photos that morning before they left Denver. His daughter had just lost her first tooth. Emma wept until she had nothing left, then lay staring at the rough-hewn ceiling beams, feeling hollow. A knock on the door. "Mr. Carter." The voice was male, low, careful. Emma sat up, mistake. The room tilted and clutched the blankets. "Come in." The door opened. The man who entered was tall, 60s, with silver hair and a face carved into hard lines by weather and years. He wore work clothes, moved with the deliberate economy of someone who'd learned to conserve energy in a landscape that punished waste. His eyes were gray, direct, and unexpectedly kind. "Cole Mitchell," he said, "this is my ranch. You're safe." Emma stared at him. "You're the one who—" "Found you, yes ma'am." Sarah, the other woman. "Life flighted to Billings Memorial. Last I heard she's stable. Frostbite, hypothermia, but she'll make it." "And James?" Mitchell's expression answered before he spoke. "Search and rescue recovered him." "I'm sorry." Emma nodded, looked away. The sunlight streaming through the window seemed obscene, all that brightness in a world where James was dead. "I should—" She tried to stand, collapsed back. "I need to call his wife." "Already done. University was notified. His family's been contacted." Mitchell moved to the window, gave her space. "You've been asleep 18 hours. Doctor came by, checked you over. Frostbite on your toes, some lacerations, mild concussion. You were lucky." "Lucky." Emma wanted to laugh at that, but her throat was too raw. "How did you find us?" "Heard your radio call, rode out." "In a blizzard?" "Storm wasn't that bad yet." Emma looked at him properly for the first time. His hands were scarred knuckles, enlarged with arthritis. His face had the deep creases of someone who spent his life outdoors. There was a stillness to him, a quality of watchful patience she associated with her grandfather, men who'd grown up without screens, who measured time in seasons instead of hours. "Thank you," she said. The words felt inadequate. "You saved my life. You're the one who kept crawling. That takes grit. Or stupidity. Sometimes those are the same thing." He almost smiled. "There's food in the kitchen. Bathroom's through that door. Take your time. When you're ready, we'll get you checked it out proper at the hospital." "I'm fine." "You're hypothermic, concussed, and grieving. You are not fine." The bluntness surprised her. Emma found herself nodding. "Okay." Mitchell left, closing the door gently behind him. Emma sat in the quiet, looking around the room. Simple furniture, a braided rug, a bookshelf with worn spines. On the nightstand, someone had left a glass of water and a bottle of aspirin. She took 3 pills, drained the glass, and let herself fall back into sleep. By evening, Emma was up and moving, albeit slowly. She'd showered, changed into clothes. Mitchell had provided flannel shirt, jeans, thick socks, and made her way to the main house. The ranch sprawled below the guest cabin, a collection of buildings arranged around a central compound barn, equipment sheds, what looked like staff housing. Beyond, pastures stretched toward mountains still white with fresh snow. The main house was old but well-maintained, logs, chink-tight metal roof, steep enough to shed snow. Inside, it smelled of coffee and wood polish. Emma found Mitchell in the kitchen cooking. "Sit," he said, nodding to a table by the window. "You need to eat." She sat, too tired to argue. He set a plate in front of her elk stew, biscuits, roasted vegetables. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing but her body demanded fuel, and she obeyed. Mitchell sat across from her with coffee, didn't speak, let her eat in peace. When she'd finished, he refilled her water glass. "The university called," he said. "They want you back in Denver for debriefing. I told them you'd call when you were ready." "I should go back today." "You should rest another day at least." Emma met his eyes. "I can't stay here. Every time I close my eyes, I see James in that water." Mitchell nodded slowly. "I know that feeling." Something in his voice made her look at him more carefully. There were shadows in his face, old grief that had settled into the bone. "You've lost people. My wife, my daughter." He said it simply, facts delivered without embellishment. "Years ago now. I'm sorry." "So am I." He stood, carried his mug to the sink. "But sitting around drowning in it doesn't honor them. Work does. Purpose does. You said on the radio you were with the Wildlife Research Division. What were you working on?" Emma hesitated. Talking about work felt wrong, like she was stepping around James's body. But maybe Mitchell was right. Maybe work was the only thing that made sense right now. "Genetic rehabilitation," she said. "There's a wild Mustang herd in these mountains. Montana Rockies population descended from rancher stock in the 1800s. They've been isolated long enough that inbreeding is becoming an issue. We were supposed to do a 6-month study, establish whether genetic intervention could save the herd. You're a geneticist. Reproductive genetics specifically. Fertility, breeding patterns, hereditary disease." She wrapped her hands around her water glass. "I specialize in saving populations that everyone else has written off." Mitchell's expression shifted, something unreadable crossing his face. "That's important work." It was. "I don't know if the university will continue the study now that—" She couldn't finish. "The herd's on federal land that borders my ranch," Mitchell said. "I've been advocating for their protection for years. If you want to continue the work, I can help. I know every canyon and creek in these mountains." Emma looked at him, surprised. "Why would you do that?" He was quiet for a moment, gaze distant. "My daughter wanted to be a veterinarian. She loved animals the way some people love God, absolutely without question. She died before she could finish her degree." He met Emma's eyes. "I've spent 8 years wondering how to honor that. Maybe helping you finish your work is a start." The offer hung between them, weighted with shared loss and unspoken understanding. Emma felt something crack in her chest, not grief, but its opposite, the faint, fragile possibility of moving forward. "Okay," she said. "If the university approves it, thank you." Mitchell nodded. "In the meantime, you should rest. Guest cabin's yours as long as you need it." He left her at the table, and Emma sat watching the mountains go purple with dusk, thinking about James, about work, about the strange kindness of this taciturn rancher who rode into blizzards to save strangers. Outside, the last light bled from the sky, and the ranch settled into the quiet business of night. The next morning brought news. Emma sat in Mitchell's study, a cluttered room lined with filing cabinets and topographic maps, while the university's department head explained via speakerphone that the project was suspended indefinitely pending an investigation into the accident. Dr. Voss's family was considering legal action. The insurance company wanted statements. Everything was on hold. "What about Sarah?" Emma asked. "Sarah Chen, my research assistant. Is she recovering? She'll be released from the hospital next week. She's given her statement to the investigators. And the data we collected, we'd already completed 2 weeks of field work before the accident. All equipment was in the vehicle. The laptops were damaged, but it is attempting data recovery." A pause. "Dr. Carter, I have to ask, were you driving at the time of the accident?" Emma's hand tightened on the phone. "James was driving. I was in the passenger seat reviewing field notes. Sarah was in the back. We hit black ice on a turn. No intoxication, no reckless behavior." Jesus Christ, no. James was the most careful person I've ever known. He drove like my grandmother. Her voice broke. "It was just bad luck and bad weather." The department head sighed. "I believe you, but the lawyers need everything documented. I'm sorry this is happening. Take a week, get yourself together, and we'll reassess." "A week won't change anything. I need to work." "Emma, the herd doesn't care that we had an accident. Breeding season starts in 6 weeks. If we don't establish baseline data now, we lose an entire year. Then we lose a year. Your mental health is more important than don't. Emma closed her eyes. Don't tell me what's important. James is dead because we were doing this work. If I stop now, his death means nothing. Silence on the line. Then 1 week. After that, we'll talk about limited resumption, but you're not going back into the field alone. Safety protocols are non-negotiable. Emma agreed, hung up, and sat staring at the maps on Mitchell's walls. Red lines marked property boundaries. Blue indicated water sources. Green showed areas of dense forest. The Wild Mustang Range was marked in yellow, a sprawling territory that covered 30 square miles of federal wilderness. Heard that, Mitchell said from the doorway. You want to keep working? You are welcome to operate out of this ranch. I can provide transport supplies, whatever you need. The university won't pay for any of that. I'm not asking them to. Emma turned to face him. Why are you doing this? Mitchell stepped into the room, moved to the window that overlooked the barn. I told you about my daughter. What I didn't tell you is how she died. He kept his gaze on the mountains. She was 25, doing fieldwork for her master's thesis, studying elk migration. Her truck broke down in backcountry middle of summer. She tried to hike out. Heat exhaustion. By the time search and rescue found her, it was too late. Emma's throat tightened. I'm so sorry. Afterward, everyone kept saying she should have stayed with the vehicle, should have rationed water, should have done a dozen things differently. As if knowing what she should have done brought her back. He looked at Emma finally. She died doing work she believed in. Maybe it was reckless. Maybe she could have been more careful. But that work mattered to her, and I'll be damned if I let people diminish it by calling it stupid, pointless. So you're helping me to honor her. I'm helping you because someone needs to, and I have the resources. He crossed his arms. But yes, if my daughter's death taught me anything, it's that life's too short to leave good work undone. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back, nodded. Okay, thank you. But I pay my own way, supplies, food, anything I use. I'm not a charity case. Didn't think you were. Mitchell almost smiled. You've got a week to recover. After that, if you want to work, we'll work. He left her in the study surrounded by maps of territories she barely knew, planning a project that might be futile, mourning a colleague she couldn't save. But for the first time since the accident, Emma felt something other than grief. She felt determination. Over the following days, Emma discovered the rhythms of the Mitchell Ranch. She learned that Red Coleman ran an operations, a grizzled man in his 60s with a limp and a way of spitting that seemed to punctuate his sentences. He'd served in the military with Mitchell's father, stayed on as foreman for 30 years, and carried himself with the unflappable competence of someone who'd seen worse than Montana winters. She learned that the ranch employed 6 full-time hands, mostly quiet men, who nodded politely when she passed but didn't initiate conversation. They worked dawn to dusk, repairing fences, feeding cattle, maintaining equipment, with the steady efficiency of people who understood that in this landscape, small mistakes became fatal. She learned that Mitchell rose every morning at 4:30, spent an hour in his office before anyone else woke, and could throw a saddle on a horse in under a minute. He ran his operation with minimal fuss, no shouting, no drama, giving orders that were obeyed instantly because they were fair and made sense. And she learned that despite the ranch's obvious prosperity, Mitchell lived modestly. His house was comfortable but not luxurious. He drove a 20-year-old truck. His office contained one photograph, a woman and a young girl on horseback, both grinning at the camera that he never mentioned but glanced at frequently. Emma spent her recovery studying the data they'd collected before the accident. The laptops had been damaged but not destroyed, and Mitchell's IT contact managed to recover most of the files. She pored over GPS tracks, population estimates, behavioral observations, building a picture of the herd. What she found was troubling. The Montana Rockies Mustang population had once numbered over 200, now maybe 70 remained. Genetic diversity markers showed severe inbreeding, second and third generation sibling pairings, father-daughter matings, all the hallmarks of a population in collapse. Fertility rates were declining. Foal mortality was climbing. Without intervention, the herd would be extinct within 20 years. But intervention required understanding the genetic profile of every animal, blood samples, DNA analysis, building a database that would allow her to identify which horses carried the healthiest genes. That meant months of fieldwork, darting and tagging laboratory analysis. It meant exactly the kind of project James had been excited about. Emma closed her laptop, pressed her palms against her eyes. A week after the accident, grief still ambushed her at random moments, seeing James's handwriting on a field note, remembering an inside joke, the absence where he should have been. She'd called his wife, offered condolences that sounded hollow even as she spoke them. What do you say to a woman who'd lost her husband? Sorry wasn't enough. Nothing was enough. A knock on the guest cabin door interrupted her thoughts. Mitchell stood on the porch holding a pair of binoculars. Feel up to a ride, he asked. Emma looked at him, then at the mountains beyond, where North Ridge, best place to spot the Mustang herd. If you're going to study them, you should see them. She pulled on Boots' jacket and followed him to the barn. Mitchell saddled 2 horses, a bay gelding for himself, a calm chestnut mare for Emma. She hadn't ridden in years, but the muscle memory returned. Mount from the left, settle into the saddle heels, down reins loose. The mare stood patiently while Emma adjusted stirrups, then followed Mitchell's gelding out of the barn. They rode north across pastures where Mitchell's cattle grazed past fence lines, marked with yellow surveyor's tape, into country that grew wilder with every mile. The trail climbed through pine forest, switchbacking up a steep slope until they emerged onto a windswept ridge with views that stretched to the horizon. There, Mitchell said, pointing west. Emma lifted the binoculars, scanned, and found them. The Mustangs moved through a high meadow like ghosts, 20 animals, maybe 30 coats, ranging from black to dun to paint. They grazed peacefully, heads down, tails swishing. A foal nursed from its mother. A young stallion nipped at a rival, asserting dominance. They're beautiful, Emma breathed. They've been here longer than Montana's been a state, Mitchell said. When my great-grandfather homesteaded this land, the herd was already established. Story goes that they're descended from horses that escaped a traveling show in the 1890s, circus stock bred for color and temperament. By the time anyone thought to round them up, they'd gone feral. How much of this is federal land? All of it. Bureau of Land Management controls Mustang populations under the Wild Free-Roaming Horses and Burros Act. Officially, they're protected. Practically, they're neglected. Mitchell handed her a water bottle. BLM did a population study 5 years back, concluded the herd was stable and didn't require management. I've been arguing with them ever since, trying to get genetic testing authorized. And they refused. Budget constraints, manpower shortages, pick an excuse. He shook his head. Federal bureaucracy moves slower than glaciers. I've been throwing money at lawyers and environmental groups trying to force action. When I heard the university was sending researchers, I figured it was the first good news in years. Emma lowered the binoculars, looked at him. You planned this project. I advocated for it, funded part of the grant that brought you here. I wanted an independent scientific assessment that would force BLM to take the situation seriously. So you're my employer. Technically, the university is. I'm just a concerned landowner. Mitchell met her eyes. Does it matter? Emma thought about that. No, not if the work's legitimate. It's legitimate. These horses need help. They sat in silence, watching the herd while the wind carried the scent of pine and snow. Emma thought about genetics, about bloodlines collapsing under the weight of their own isolation. She thought about James, who'd wanted to save something that couldn't save itself. I'll need to catch them, she said. Tag them, draw blood, run DNA analysis. That's going to take months. I can help. I know how to work with horses. I'll need supplies, a field lab, transport. I've got an equipment shed we can convert. Generator power, water hookup. Whatever you need. Emma looked at him sidelong. You've thought this through. Had a lot of time to think. Mitchell's expression was unreadable. After my daughter died, I spent 2 years drinking and feeling sorry for myself. That didn't bring her back. So I looked for something I could fix. Turned out these horses needed fixing. You can't save everything. No, but I can save something. That's better than nothing. Emma turned back to the herd, watching them move through the meadow, unaware they were dying out. Okay, let's save something. They rode back to the ranch in the late afternoon light, making plans, and Emma felt for the first time since the accident like the world had meaning again. 3 days later, Diana Whitmore arrived. Emma was in the equipment shed, now converted into a makeshift laboratory, when she heard the vehicle. She looked up from the microscope to see a sleek black SUV pulling into the ranch yard, incongruous among the work trucks and ATVs. The driver's door opened and a woman stepped out. She moved like someone who'd grown up with money, confident, unhurried, wearing designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Emma's monthly stipend. Her blonde hair was styled despite the wind. Diamond studs caught the afternoon sun. Emma watched through the shed window as Mitchell emerged from the barn. The woman smiled, brittle, possessive, and kissed his cheek. Mitchell didn't return the gesture, but he didn't pull away either. Red Coleman appeared from the equipment garage, spat, and retreated back inside. Emma turned back to her microscope, told herself it was none of her business, but curiosity gnawed at her. Who was this woman, and why did Mitchell look like he was enduring her presence rather than enjoying it? An hour later, someone knocked on the shed door. Emma opened it to find the blonde woman standing there, smile firmly in place. "Dr. Carter," the woman said, extending a manicured hand. "I'm Diana Whitmore, Cole's fiancée." Emma shook her hand, surprised. "Fiancée? I didn't realize. Congratulations." "Thank you. We're getting married in June." Diana glanced around the shed, taking in the jury-rigged lab equipment, the samples in refrigerated cases, the clutter of scientific work. "Cole mentioned you'd be staying here for a few months. I wanted to introduce myself, make sure you had everything you needed." "Mr. Mitchell's been very generous. He's good at that." Diana's smile didn't reach her eyes. "He mentioned your colleague died in the accident. I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you. It must be difficult continuing the work without him." "It's what he would have wanted." Diana nodded, expressions sympathetic in a way that felt rehearsed. "Of course, still, I imagine it's isolating out here. If you need anything, company supplies, someone to talk to, please don't hesitate to ask." "I appreciate that." They stood in awkward silence. Diana's gaze drifted to the photos pinned on Emma's workboard, images of the Mustang, her GPS coordinates, data charts. "These horses mean a lot to Cole," she said. "His daughter was obsessed with them. After she died, he threw himself into this conservation project. It's very noble." There was something in her tone, a dismissiveness, that made Emma's shoulders tense. "The herd's in danger. Genetic collapse is real." "I'm sure it is." Diana smiled again. "I just hope it's worth the investment. Cole's sunk a lot of money into this. Preventing extinction is always worth investment." "Of course." Diana checked her phone. "I should go. Lovely meeting you, Dr. Carter." She left and Emma stood in the shed doorway watching the black SUV drive away. Something about the encounter felt wrong. Diana's forced friendliness, the way she'd cataloged the shed's contents, the veiled commentary about money. Emma closed the door, returned to her work, and tried to shake the uneasy feeling that she'd just been assessed and found lacking. That evening, Emma joined Mitchell and Red for dinner in the main house, a habit that had developed over the past week. Mitchell cooked efficiently, producing meals that were hearty and unpretentious. Red provided running commentary on ranch operations, spitting occasionally into a tin cup. Tonight, Diana's visit hung over the table like smoke. "She seems nice," Emma offered, uncertain why she was probing. Red snorted. "Nice as a rattlesnake." Mitchell shot him a warning look. "Diana's fine." "Diana's a Whitmore," Red said, "which means she's poisoned from a poison tree." "That's enough." "Boss, you're making a mistake." "I said enough." Mitchell's tone left no room for argument. Red subsided, spitting into his cup with more force than necessary. Emma looked between them, confused. "Who are the Whitmores?" she asked. Mitchell was silent for a moment, jaw tight. "Diana's father is Thomas Whitmore, owns Whitmore Mining, one of the largest mining operations in the state. They extract copper, gold, some rare earth minerals. Very wealthy, very connected. And you're marrying his daughter. It's a business arrangement." Mitchell met her eyes. "Her family wants access to my land's water rights. I want funding for conservation projects. It's mutually beneficial." Emma stared at him. "You're marrying someone for water rights. I'm marrying someone because my bloodline ends with me, and land without heirs is land that gets swallowed by corporations." His voice was flat. "At least this way I can attach conditions. Diana inherits, but the conservation trust remains inviolate. The horses stay protected. The land stays intact." "That's the most cynical thing I've ever heard." "It's practical. It's tragic." Mitchell pushed back from the table, stood. "I don't expect you to understand. You're young. You still think love conquers all." He carried his plate to the sink. When you've been around longer, you realize some decisions aren't about happiness. They're about legacy. He left the kitchen. Emma sat with Red in the uncomfortable silence. He wasn't always like this, Red said quietly. When Emma, his daughter, was alive, Cole was different, laughed more, had hope. He spit. Then she did, and 6 months later the doctors told him the accident made him sterile. Something broke in him after that, like he decided if he couldn't pass on his blood, nothing else mattered. Emma thought about Mitchell's careful stoicism, his dedication to work the way he looked at his daughter's photograph. And Diana showed up 2 years ago, all charm and promises. Her father's been trying to buy this ranch for decades. The water rights alone are worth millions. But Cole wouldn't sell. So Diana came along with a different offer: marriage access to the land after he dies, but the conservation trust stays protected. Red shook his head. It's a trap. Whitmores don't honor agreements. They'll tear this place apart the minute Cole's in the ground. Have you told him that? Every damn day. He doesn't listen. Red met Emma's eyes. You seem like a smart woman, Dr. Carter. While you're here, watch yourself around Diana. She doesn't like competition. I'm not competing for anything. Maybe, but Cole looks at you different than he looks at her. Diana will notice if she hasn't already. Emma wanted to protest, to say Red was imagining things, but she thought about the moment she'd shared with Mitchell, working together in comfortable silence, his rare almost smiles, the way he'd ridden into a blizzard to save her. There was a connection between them, something unspoken but real, and connections in this landscape were dangerous. Emma thanked Red for dinner, returned to the guest cabin, and lay awake listening to wind rattle the windows. She thought about genetics, about bloodlines, about the cruelty of biology that made fertility seem like the measure of a man's worth. Then she thought about the patterns she'd noticed in the Mustang, Data, the stallions with pelvic trauma, who'd recovered fertility after several years of dormancy. Regenerative capacity in male reproductive systems wasn't well studied, especially in trauma cases. Most diagnoses were made immediately post-injury, during the acute phase when swelling and cellular damage made sterility seem permanent. But what if it wasn't permanent? Emma sat up, opened her laptop, and began researching. She pulled up case studies, men who'd been declared sterile after accidents only to regain fertility years later. The mechanisms weren't fully understood, possibly stem cell regeneration, possibly recovery of Leydig cells that produce testosterone, possibly simple tissue healing. The common factor: time. Mitchell's accident had been 8 years ago. The doctors had tested him immediately after, during the acute injury phase. Had anyone tested him since? Emma chewed her lip, considering the ethics. This was Mitchell's private medical history. She had no right to pry. But if the diagnosis was wrong, if he was living his life based on faulty information, didn't he deserve to know? She pulled up his basic medical records. He'd given her access for insurance purposes related to the fieldwork, and found the relevant files: pelvic fracture, multiple surgeries, sperm count post-trauma, effectively 0. Diagnosis: permanent sterility. But nothing recent, no follow-up tests, no reassessment. Emma closed the laptop, heart pounding. She couldn't tell him, not without evidence, not without being certain. Giving false hope would be unconscionably cruel. But maybe, just maybe, she could find evidence. She'd need a sample. She'd need lab time. She'd need to conduct the tests without him knowing, verify the results, and only then present the information. Emma lay back, staring at the ceiling, thinking about ethics and hope and the weight of knowledge. Outside, an owl called. The ranch settled into darkness. And in the main house, Cole Mitchell sat alone in his study, looking at his daughter's photograph, unaware that the woman in the guest cabin was contemplating a revelation that would shatter his carefully constructed resignation. The next weeks fell into a pattern. Emma and Mitchell rode out most mornings to observe the Mustang herd. They'd established observation posts as high points with clear views of the meadows, where the horses gathered, and spent hours documenting behavior, taking photographs, mapping movement patterns. The work was painstaking, slow. Emma cataloged individual animals, noting distinguishing features, assigning ID numbers. She learned to recognize them at a distance: the black stallion with the white blaze, the paint mare who always grazed at the edge of the herd, the young colt who bucked and played. Mitchell taught her to read sign tracks and mudscat patterns, grazing damage. He moved through the landscape like he was part of it, noticing things Emma would have missed: the way ravens circling, meant a predator kill nearby, how wind direction affected where the horses bedded down, which trails they used depending on season. They talked while they worked. Small things at first, Emma's childhood in suburban Colorado, Mitchell's memories of growing up on the ranch. Then deeper things, her difficult relationship with her father, a renowned geneticist who dismissed her work as derivative, Mitchell's regrets about time he didn't spend with his daughter before she died. I was always working, he said one morning, binoculars trained on the herd, building the ranch, expanding operations, proving I could make something of the land. My Emma would ask me to go riding and I'd say later, and later never came. He lowered the binoculars. By the time I realized later was running out, she was gone. Emma didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing, just sat with him in the shared silence of regret. Diana visited every few days. She was unfailingly polite to Emma, brought supplies from town, made small talk about weather and local politics. But Emma noticed the way Diana's eyes tracked Mitchell when he wasn't looking, calculating, assessing, like she was measuring his value against some internal ledger. And Emma noticed Mitchell's body language around Diana, stiff, formal, dutiful, but not affectionate. He never touched her unless she initiated it. He never smiled at her the way he almost smiled at Emma when they were in the field. It shouldn't matter. Emma had no claim on him. But it did matter, and that fact scared her more than she wanted to admit. She buried herself in work, spending nights in the makeshift lab, analyzing what little data they'd collected. The herd's genetic profile was worse than she'd feared, inbreeding coefficients so high they indicated immediate genetic depression. Fertility would collapse within 2 generations if nothing changed. But changing it required catching the horses, tranquilizing, drawing blood, tagging, releasing, and that required resources Emma didn't have. The university still hadn't approved resumption of the full project. Her funding remained frozen. Sarah Chen had recovered but declined to return to Montana, traumatized by the accident. Emma was alone, under-equipped, working on borrowed time. One evening, 2 weeks after Diana's first visit, Emma sat in Mitchell's study reviewing budgets. The numbers didn't add up. She needed tranquilizer darts, blood collection kits, GPS trackers, a portable centrifuge for field analysis. Even at wholesale prices, the equipment would cost $40,000. She didn't have $40,000. Mitchell appeared in the doorway. Problem. Emma showed him the spreadsheet. I can't afford the equipment. The university won't release funds until the investigation closes, and that could take months. I'll cover it. You can't just... I can, and I will. He pulled up a chair, studied the budget. What's your timeline? Breeding season starts in 3 weeks. If I can't collect samples before then, we lose a year. Then we don't lose a year. Mitchell picked up a pen, started making notes. I'll place the equipment orders tomorrow. Rush shipping. We'll set up a capture operation. You handle the medical side. I'll handle logistics. We'll need Red and a couple of the hands for manpower. Mitchell, this is too much. Cole. She blinked. What? Call me Cole. We're past formalities. He met her eyes. And it's not too much. It's what needs doing. Emma felt something warm spread through her chest, dangerous and unwelcome. Thank you, Cole. He nodded, went back to the notes. They worked until midnight, planning the capture operation, and Emma tried very hard not to notice how close they sat, or how natural it felt, or how much she'd started to depend on his presence. The equipment arrived in stages over the following week. FedEx and UPS trucks navigated the ranch roads, delivering crates that Emma unpacked like Christmas presents: dart guns, sedative vials, blood draw kits, portable lab equipment. Cole had spared no expense. Red helped her set up the field lab, grumbling about damn fool scientists, but showing surprising competence with electrical work and equipment calibration. The shed transformed into a functional facility, refrigerators, humming computers, network supplies organized with military precision. You could work for the CDC, Emma said, impressed. Did once, Red spat. Long time ago. Field epidemiology during the Gulf War. Hated it. He finished wiring a breaker box. Too many people dying for stupid reasons. Emma thought about James, wondered if dying for science counted as stupid, decided not to ask. 3 days before the scheduled capture operation, Emma received an email from the university. Dr. Voss's widow was not pursuing legal action. The insurance investigation had concluded the accident was weather-related, no negligence involved. The project could resume with modified safety protocols. Emma called her department head immediately. "I'm staying," she said. "The ranch owner is providing logistical support. I'm resuming the Mustang study." "Are you sure that's wise? You've been through trauma?" "I'm sure this is what James would want." A long pause. "Okay, but Emma, be careful. Montana winters are unforgiving, and you're a long way from help." "I know. I'll be careful." She hung up and realized she was shaking. The project was real again. She had funding, equipment, a team. It could actually work. That evening, Cole invited her to dinner at the main house, a private meal. Just the two of them, Red having gone into town. Diana was visiting her father, and Helena wouldn't be back for days. Emma dressed carefully, told herself it was professional, knew she was lying. Cole cooked steaks, opened a bottle of good wine, and they ate by candlelight because a storm had knocked out the power. It felt like a date, though neither acknowledged it. "Tell me about your father," Cole said. "You mentioned he's a geneticist." "Was. He retired last year." Emma sipped wine. "He's brilliant, groundbreaking work on epigenetic inheritance. Published in Nature, won a Lasker Award. Very respected. But, but he's also a perfectionist who thinks anyone not measuring up to his standards is wasting their potential." She smiled without humor. "I chose reproductive genetics because he dismissed it as lesser science. I wanted to prove him wrong." "Have you Gwen?" "Not yet. He didn't even come to my PhD defense. Said he was busy." Cole refilled her glass. "My father was similar. Rancher, self-made, built this operation from dirt. He had very specific ideas about what made a man worth something. I spent 30 years trying to meet those standards." He looked at the window where rain streaked the glass. "Then he died, and I realized I'd wasted all that time seeking approval from someone who wasn't capable of giving it." "What did you do?" "Kept ranching, but for myself, not him." Cole met her eyes. "Started making decisions based on what felt right, not what fit some impossible standard. Like the Conservation Trust. My father would have called it sentimental foolishness. To me, it's the only thing that matters." Emma wanted to reach across the table, take his hand, close the distance between them. Instead, she said, "You're a good man, Cole Mitchell. I'm a stubborn old fool who should know better." "Better than what?" He didn't answer, just looked at her with an expression that made her breath catch. The moment stretched, charged with possibility, and then whilst stood cleared plates broke the spell. "We should get some sleep," he said. "Early start tomorrow." Emma nodded, helped clean up, and walked back to the guest cabin through the rain. She lay awake for a long time thinking about the way Cole had looked at her, the way she'd wanted him to say what he couldn't say. This was foolish, dangerous. He was engaged. She was here for work. Getting involved would complicate everything. But her heart didn't care about complications. Emma fell asleep to the sound of rain and woke to sunlight and the knowledge that she was in trouble, the kind of trouble that had nothing to do with Mustangs or genetics and everything to do with falling for someone she couldn't have. The capture operation began at dawn. Cole, Emma, Red, and two ranch hands, Frank and Luis, loaded equipment into ATVs and headed north. The plan was simple: locate the herd, use low-velocity dart guns to sedate individual horses, collect blood samples while they were down, attach GPS trackers, reverse the sedation, and release them before they fully woke. In theory, straightforward. In practice, dangerous. "Horses kick," Red reminded Emma for the fifth time. "Sedated or not, you stay clear of the hind legs." "I know. And if something goes wrong, you run. Don't try to be a hero." "Got it." They reached the observation post by 8 a.m. The herd grazed in a meadow below 23 animals visible, including two pregnant mares Emma particularly wanted to sample. Cole surveyed the terrain through binoculars. "We'll approach from downwind," he said. "Frank and Luis will circle around, drive them into the open. Emma and I will be positioned here with the dart guns. Red, you handle the medical kit, stay mobile." Everyone nodded. They moved into position. Emma loaded the dart gun, checked the sight, controlled her breathing. She'd practiced on targets all week, but targets didn't move like horses. Her hands were steady, but her pulse hammered. "You've got this," Cole said quietly. She met his eyes, saw confidence, their borrowed strength from it. "Okay." The operation unfolded in controlled chaos. Frank and Luis drove the herd forward slowly, keeping them calm. Cole fired first clean shot to a young stallion's shoulder. The horse, startled, ran 20 yards, then wobbled and went down. Emma sighted on one of the pregnant mares, exhaled, squeezed the trigger. The dart flew true, struck the mare's hindquarter. The mare bolted, but the sedative worked fast. She collapsed gently into grass. Move, Cole said. They ran down to the animals. Red was already at the stallion checking vitals. Emma knelt beside the mare, felt for a pulse strong, steady, and drew blood, quickly filling vials while the horse breathed deep sedative sleep. GPS tracker attached. Blood samples secured. Red administered the reversal drug. Done, Emma said. 90 seconds. They backed away. The mare's ears twitched. Her legs moved. She surged to her feet, shook herself, and trotted off to rejoin the herd. One down, Cole said. 22 to go. They worked through the morning darting and sampling. Emma fell into a rhythm sight shoot sample release. The herd grew warier, harder to approach, but they managed 8 animals before the horses scattered into rough terrain. That's enough for today, Cole declared. We'll try again tomorrow. They packed equipment, headed back, and Emma felt exhilaration pounding through her veins. 8 samples, 8 genetic profiles to start building the database. Back at the ranch, she processed blood in the lab, running preliminary tests while adrenaline kept her wired. Cole appeared with sandwiches. You need to eat. I need to finish this. Emma, he set the food down gently, turned her away from the microscope. You've been at this for 6 hours. Take a break. She wanted to protest, but his hand was warm on her shoulder, and suddenly she was aware of how close they stood. Cole seemed to realize it too. He didn't step back. Thank you, Emma said softly, for all of this. The equipment and the help. I couldn't do this without you. You'd find a way. You're stubborn like that. Is that a compliment? In Montana, stubbornness is the highest virtue. Almost smile. They stood there, inches apart, the lab's fluorescent lights, harsh but somehow not harsh enough to break the moment. Emma thought about the fact that he was engaged, that Diana existed, that this was wrong. But it didn't feel wrong. Cole, the shed door banged open. Red stood there, expression grim. Boss, we got company. Cole stepped back, the spell broken. Who to? Diana and her father. Something cold settled in Emma's stomach. Cole's jaw tightened. I'll handle it, he said, and walked out. Emma followed, curious and uneasy. In the ranch yard, Diana's black SUV was parked beside a massive pickup truck. Diana stood with a man in his 60s, silver-haired, expensive suit, face weathered, but eyes sharp as a hawk's. Thomas Whitmore. Emma recognized him from news articles, mining magnate, political donor, one of Montana's richest men. Cole, Thomas boomed, extending a hand. Good to see you. Cole shook it, polite but cool. Thomas, what brings you out here? Diana mentioned you had a researcher staying on the property. Thought I'd introduce myself, see how the conservation work is progressing. Thomas's gaze found Emma. Dr. Carter, I presume. Emma nodded warily. Mr. Whitmore. Fascinating work you're doing. Diana tells me you're trying to save the Mustang herd. He smiled, all charm, but Emma saw calculation underneath. Admirable. Expensive too, I imagine. Cole's been very generous with support, Emma said carefully. I'm sure he has. Cole's always had a soft spot for lost causes. Thomas clapped Cole on the shoulder. No offense meant, of course. Conservation is important, but there are more efficient ways to manage wild populations, such as, Cole's voice was flat, culling, relocation, letting nature take its course. Thomas shrugged. These horses have no economic value. The land they occupy could be put to better use: cattle grazing, mineral exploration. My companies have been surveying this region for rare earth deposits. Early results are promising. The air between Cole and Thomas grew tense. Emma realized she was watching a power play, years of animosity barely concealed beneath civility. The land's federal, Cole said, and the horses are protected. For now, but policies change. Administrations change. Thomas smiled again. I'm just thinking long-term, Cole. When you and Diana are married, our families will be united. Our interests aligned, said. It would be a shame to waste resources on projects with diminishing returns. Cole's expression hardened. The conservation of trust is non-negotiable. That was the condition. Of course, I respect that. Thomas glanced at Emma. I'm sure Dr. Carter's findings will be very illuminating. I'm particularly interested in the genetic data, knowing which animals are viable, which aren't. That information could be useful for future management decisions. Emma's unease crystallized into alarm. Thomas wanted her data. He was already planning how to use it to justify removing the herd. My data is confidential, she said firmly. It's university property protected by research protocols. Naturally, Thomas's smile didn't waver. I wouldn't dream of overstepping. I'm simply expressing interest. Diana, who'd been silent, touched her father's arm. We should go. Cole's busy. Thomas nodded, shook Cole's hand again. Good seeing you, Cole. Diana, I'll pick you up later for dinner. He climbed into his truck, drove off. Diana lingered. She looked between Cole and Emma, expression unreadable. I'm sorry about my father, she said quietly. He can be intense. What does he want? Cole asked. What he always wants, control. Diana's mask slipped for a moment, showing something raw underneath fear maybe, or resignation. I'll keep him away from the project. He won't interfere. See that he doesn't. Diana nodded, got in her SUV and left. Emma and Cole stood in the yard as dust settled. That was a threat, Emma said. That was Thomas Whitmore being Thomas Whitmore. Cole's jaw worked. He's been trying to get access to this land for 30 years. Thought marrying his daughter would give him leverage. Will it? Not if I can help it. Cole turned to her. But he's right about one thing data's valuable. If he gets hold of your genetic profiles, he'll use them to argue the herd's too inbred to save that culling as the humane option. Then he'll push BLM to remove them. He can't. He can. He has senators in his pocket, bureaucrats on his payroll. If he wants those horses gone, they'll be gone. Cole met her eyes, which means you need to finish this study, prove intervention works before he acts. Emma felt the weight of it settle on her. She wasn't just documenting extinction. She was racing it. How much time do we have? She asked. Breeding season's 3 weeks. After that, BLM does population surveys in summer. If Whitmore pushes hard, they'll make a decision by fall. Cole's expression was grim. 6 months maybe. Then it's out of our hands. 6 months to save a species while fighting a man with unlimited resources and no conscience. Emma squared her shoulders. Then we better get to work. The revelations came in pieces. 3 days after Thomas Whitmore's visit, Emma received lab results from the first batch of blood samples. She stayed up past midnight analyzing data, building genetic profiles, mapping relationships. What she found made her stomach turn. The inbreeding wasn't just severe, it was catastrophic. 3 of the 8 horses she'd sampled were siblings. 2 were offspring of a father-daughter pairing. Every individual showed markers for genetic disorders, skeletal abnormalities, immune deficiencies, cardiac irregularities. The herd was dying from the inside out. But there was another pattern stranger and more intriguing. In mammals with compromised fertility, Emma had learned to look for specific biomarkers, testosterone levels, follicle counts, cellular integrity of reproductive tissue. What she found in the Mustang stallions was unexpected. Despite inbreeding depression affecting every other system, their fertility markers were recovering. 2 of the male horses showed testicular damage, consistent with past trauma kicks probably, or fighting injuries common in wild herds. But the damage wasn't permanent. Cellular regeneration was happening slowly over years. Emma pulled up her notes from Cole's medical history, compared patterns. The similarities were striking: pelvic trauma, acute sterility diagnosis. But the tests had been run 8 years ago during the worst phase of injury. Human male reproductive systems, like equine ones, had remarkable regenerative capacity if given time and the right conditions. Emma's hands shook as she opened Cole's files, studied the original test results. Sperm count post-accident effectively 0. Motility non-existent. Prognosis permanent. But the testing had stopped there. No follow-ups, no reassessment. Cole had accepted the diagnosis as final and built his life around it. What if it wasn't final? Emma ran calculations, modeled cellular regeneration rates, compared human and equine recovery curves. The data suggested, not conclusively but suggestively, that Cole's fertility might have regenerated over 8 years. Not to full capacity, but enough. Enough to father children. She sat back, heart racing. This was dangerous knowledge. If she was wrong, telling him would be cruel. But if she was right, not telling him would be a betrayal, keeping him trapped in a false belief that had shaped 8 years of his life. Emma closed her laptop, pressed palms to her eyes. Ethics demanded certainty before disclosure. She needed current tests, sperm analysis, hormone panels, comprehensive workup. But asking Cole to provide samples would require explaining her hypothesis, and she couldn't do that without being sure. There was another option. Dr. Helen Vasquez ran a fertility clinic in Billings. Emma had worked with her during grad school, knew she was brilliant and discreet. If Emma could convince Cole to undergo testing under some pretense general health screening hormone check for the ranch work, Vasquez could run the full panel without Cole knowing the real reason. It was deceptive, unethical by conventional standards. But if she was right, it was also giving Cole back a future he thought he'd lost. Emma made her decision. The next morning, she approached Cole while he was working in the barn. "I've been thinking," she said carefully. "The BLM population survey is in 6 months. If we're going to present a compelling case for genetic intervention, we need more than just horse data. We need comparative human data, reproductive genetics in isolated populations, fertility recovery patterns, cellular regeneration studies." Cole looked up from the bridle he was mending. "Okay, what do you need?" "There's a fertility specialist in Billings, Dr. Helen Vasquez. She has access to research databases I don't. I'd like to schedule a consultation review her case studies." "When, Next week if possible. I could drive in, spend a day at her clinic." Emma paused. "Actually, it might be useful if you came along. She does hormone panels for aging men, testosterone, endocrine function, bone density. Given the physical demands of ranch work, it might be worth getting a baseline assessment." Cole raised an eyebrow. "You trying to tell me I'm old?" "I'm suggesting preventive health care is smart. Red mentioned you had a bad fall last winter, hurt your hip. Hormone levels affect healing, especially after 50. It was a thin excuse, but Cole considered it. How long would the appointment take? Few hours, blood draw, physical exam, routine screenings. Vasquez is thorough but efficient. And this helps your research how weapon comparative data. If human fertility can recover from trauma, it strengthens the case for Mustang intervention. Proves regeneration is possible. Emma met his eyes. Plus, honestly, I'd feel better knowing you're in good health. You're doing a lot of physical work for someone who had major pelvic surgery. Cole studied her, and Emma worried he'd see through the deception. But finally he nodded. "All right, schedule it. But if this turns into some touchy-feely medical circus, I'm walking out." "No circus, I promise." Emma left the barn, hands shaking, and immediately called Dr. Vasquez. "Helen, it's Emma Carter. I need a favor." The appointment was scheduled for Tuesday. Emma and Cole drove to Billings in his truck, 3 hours through mountain country, mostly silent. Cole wasn't talkative at the best of times, and Emma was too nervous to make conversation. Dr. Vasquez's clinic was discreet, occupying the second floor of a medical building near the hospital. Emma had briefed her thoroughly run every fertility test full panel, but presented to Cole as routine men's health screening. Vasquez had agreed, intrigued by the hypothesis. "If you're right," she'd said over the phone, "this could change fertility diagnostics. Most men with trauma-induced sterility are never retested. We assume permanence." "That's what I'm afraid of," Emma had replied. Now sitting in the waiting room while Cole underwent testing, Emma felt guilt gnaw at her. She was manipulating him, using his trust to violate his medical privacy. But if she was right, if he could father children, didn't that justify the deception? 2 hours passed. Cole emerged looking annoyed. "They took 4 vials of blood," he grumbled, "for routine testing." "Comprehensive panels require samples," Emma said. "Vasquez is being thorough." "She better be. I feel like a pincushion." They drove back to the ranch, and Emma spent the next 3 days in anxious anticipation, checking her email obsessively. Vasquez had said results would take 72 hours. On Friday morning, the email arrived: preliminary results. Urgent. Emma's hands shook as she opened the attachment. The data was there, stark and undeniable. Sperm count 15 million ml, low normal but viable. Motility 42% progressive within functional range. Morphology 8%, normal forms borderline but adequate. Testosterone 420 ng/dl, healthy for age. FSH elevated but consistent with recovery pattern. Vasquez's notes. Patient shows clear evidence of regenerated fertility. Sperm count sufficient for natural conception. Motility adequate. Given trauma history, this represents remarkable recovery. Recommend patient be informed of findings immediately. Emma read it 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Cole could have children. 8 years of believing he was sterile, 8 years of resignation, of loveless engagement, of building a life around the absence of biological legacy, and it was based on outdated information. She'd been right. And now she had to tell him. Emma found Cole in his study that evening reviewing contracts. She knocked entered without waiting for permission. "We need to talk," she said. He looked up, saw her expression, set down his pen. "What's wrong?" "The testing Vasquez did. There's something you need to know." Emma closed the door, sat down. Her heart hammered. "Cole, I didn't tell you the whole truth about why I wanted you to see her." His eyes narrowed. "Explain." "When I was analyzing the Mustang blood samples, I noticed a pattern, stallions with old pelvic injuries, showing regenerated fertility. The damage wasn't permanent. It healed over years." She took a breath. "It made me wonder about your diagnosis. The tests that declared you sterile were done 8 years ago, right after your accident during the acute trauma phase. You've never been retested since." Cole's face went very still. "What are you saying?" "I asked Vasquez to run a full fertility panel, without telling you what I suspected. I know that was wrong, but I needed to be certain before I—" "Emma," his voice was dangerous. "What did the test show?" She pulled up the email on her phone, handed it to him. Cole read in silence. Emma watched his face cycle through emotions: confusion, disbelief, anger, hope, and something like devastation. "This can't be right," he said finally. His voice was hoarse. "Vasquez triple-checked. Your sperm count is low but viable. Motility's adequate. Cole, you can father children. You probably could have for the last few years, but no one retested you." Cole set the phone down, walked to the window. His shoulders shook. "8 years," he whispered. "8 goddamn years, I thought." He broke off. Emma approached cautiously. "I'm sorry I deceived you, but I had to know for certain before I told you. False hope would have been—" "False hope." Cole spun to face her. His eyes were wet. "Do you have any idea what this means?" "What I've—" His voice cracked. "I burned my daughter's photos. I gave away her horses. I stopped caring about anything except land and legacy because I thought my bloodline ended with me. I accepted Diana's proposal because—" He stopped, covered his face with his hands. Emma's throat tightened. "Cole, and now you tell me it was all based on a lie that I could have, that I've wasted—" He made a sound between a laugh and a sob. "Jesus Christ." Emma crossed to him, put a hand on his arm. "You didn't waste anything. You built a conservation trust. You saved this ranch. You've been honoring your daughter all along." "I dishonored her by giving up." Cole's voice was raw. "She believed in fighting for what mattered. And I just quit." "You didn't quit. You survived." "Barely." They stood there, Emma's hand on his arm, Cole trembling with 8 years of grief and rage finally breaking through the stoic facade. "What do I do now?" he asked quietly. Emma thought about Diana, about the wedding scheduled for June, about contracts and water rights and cynical arrangements. She thought about the way Cole looked at her when they were in the field, the almost smiles, the connection they'd been denying. "You stop living like you're already dead," she said. "You make choices based on hope, not resignation." Cole met her eyes. "And if I choose wrong, then at least you chose." They stood inches apart, the study's lamplight, casting shadows, the world narrowing to this moment. Cole's hand rose to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheek. "I've been trying so hard not to feel this," he said. "Feel what you—" His voice was barely audible. "Emma, you're half my age. You're here for work. You're—" "Falling for you," Emma finished, despite knowing I shouldn't. Cole's expression was anguish and hope tangled together. "I'm engaged. To someone you don't love. For reasons that don't exist anymore." "It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple." Emma put her hand over his, the one still touching her face. "Cole, you've been living in a prison you built yourself. The diagnosis was wrong. The engagement is wrong. What are you so afraid of? That this is another mistake. That I'll hurt you. That I'm too old, too broken, too—" Emma kissed him. It was desperate and tender. 8 years of his loneliness meeting weeks of her wanting, and when they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. You're not broken, Emma said. You're healing. Cole pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. Diana's going to fight this. Let her. Her father will make our lives hell. Let him try. The ranch, the conservation trust, everything could be at risk. Cole, Emma pulled back to look at him. Do you love her, Mano? Do you want to spend your life with her? God, no. Then end it. Choose yourself. Choose this. She touched his chest, felt his heart hammering. Choose us. Cole looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his face, resignation giving way to resolve. Okay, he said. Okay. Diana arrived at the ranch 2 hours later, unannounced, which was unusual. Emma was in the guest cabin when she saw the black SUV pull up. Cole emerged from the main house, met Diana in the yard. Even from a distance, Emma could see the tension in their body language. She shouldn't watch. This was private. She watched anyway. The conversation was brief, too far away for Emma to hear words, but she saw Cole's gestures firm, final. She saw Diana's face go from confident to confused to furious. Saw Diana yank something from her finger, throw it at Cole's feet. The engagement ring. Diana climbed back in her SUV tires, spitting gravel as she tore out of the ranch. Cole stood alone in the yard looking at the ring on the ground. Then he picked it up, walked to the barn, and threw it into the horse trough. Emma's breath caught. He'd done it. He'd actually ended the engagement. And now everything would change. Red appeared at the guest cabin an hour later. Boss wants to see you, he said. Main house, Mom. Emma followed him across the yard. The ranch felt different, charged with the possibility and danger in equal measure. She found Cole in the study, pacing. I told her, he said without preamble. It's over. The engagement, the arrangement, all of it. How did she react? About how you'd expect. Threats, accusations, promised her father would destroy me. Cole's jaw was tight. But I don't care anymore. I'm done making decisions based on fear. Emma felt something bloom in her chest, relief, joy, terror. What happens now? Now we wait for Thomas Whitmore to make his move. Because he will. Cole met her eyes. Emma, I need you to understand what you're getting into. The Whitmores are powerful, vindictive. If you stay here, if this is real, you'll be in the crossfire. I know. Your career could be affected. Your research. They'll come after the project, try to discredit you. I know. And you're still willing? Emma crossed to him, took his face in her hands. Cole Mitchell, I drove into a blizzard to save Mustangs because I believe some things are worth fighting for. You think I'm going to run now because a rich asshole threatens me? Cole almost smiled, except this time it was a full smile, genuine and transforming. No, I don't think that. Good. Emma kissed him softer this time. We'll face whatever comes. Together. Together, Cole agreed. They stood in the study holding each other while the ranch settled into evening, and Emma felt, despite the storm she knew was coming, something close to peace. Outside, the mountains held their snow, and the Mustangs grazed in meadows they'd occupied for a century, unaware that the humans trying to save them had just declared war on forces that crushed anything in their path. But wars were won by those who believed they had something worth saving, and Emma and Cole believed. The counterattack came faster than expected. 3 days after Cole ended the engagement, Emma woke to find her field lab door ajar. She'd locked it the night before, certain of it, but now the padlock hung loose, chain coiled on the ground like a dead snake. She pushed the door open cautiously. Inside, everything was wrong. The refrigeration unit stood open, still humming, but useless without closed doors. Blood samples sat at room temperature, ready degrading. Her laptop was gone from the desk. Backup drives scattered across the floor, some crushed under boot heels. The microscope had been knocked over, lens cracked. Sample vials lay shattered, precious genetic material soaking into floorboards. Emma stood in the doorway, heart sinking. Months of work. Destroyed. She turned and ran to the main house. Cole was in the kitchen with Red, both men looking up as she burst through the door. The lab, Emma gasped. Someone broke in. Everything's ruined. They followed her back to the shed. Cole's face went hard as stone as he surveyed the damage. Red spat, pulled out his phone. Calling the sheriff, Red said. No, Cole's voice was flat. Call county deputies directly. Not Marlowe. Sheriff's the one who responds to property crimes. Marlowe's in Whitmore's pocket. Has been for years. Call the county office, ask for someone else. Red nodded, stepped outside to make the call. Emma picked through the wreckage cataloging losses. The GPS tracking data was gone, all those captures, all that location information erased. The genetic profiles she'd been building, backup drives, crushed. Even her field notes, handwritten observations accumulated over weeks, had vanished. They didn't just vandalize, Emma said quietly. They stole specific things. Data records, anything that documented the herd's genetic status. Cole crouched beside her, examining the pattern of destruction. Professional job. Knew exactly what to take, what to destroy. Left equipment that could be replaced, took information that couldn't. Whitmore. Has to be. Cole stood. He's sending a message. You help me, I hurt you. Emma felt rage replace shock. He can't just, we have rights, legal protections. Emma. Cole's expression was grim. You're in Montana on land bordering Whitmore territory after I humiliated his daughter. Rights matter when law enforcement isn't corrupt. Here, Thomas Whitmore is the law. Red returned, shaking his head. County's sending a deputy, but won't be here until tomorrow. Budget cuts, manpower shortage, take your pick for excuses. I pushed, they said, unless there's active danger, it's not priority. Of course it's not. Cole pulled out his phone. I'm calling my lawyer. Emma, document everything, photos, inventory of what's missing. We'll need it for insurance claims and civil suit. Emma spent the next hour photographing destruction, listing losses, trying to keep her hands from shaking. This was more than vandalism. It was erasure, an attempt to undo months of scientific work to ensure the Mustang herd stayed undocumented and vulnerable. By the time the sun reached noon, Emma had compiled a devastating inventory. All blood samples, 23 horses destroyed, genetic sequencing, data stolen, GPS tracking logs stolen, field notes stolen, backup drives 3 destroyed, laptop stolen, microscope damaged beyond repair, portable centrifuge intact but contaminated, total loss approximately $50,000 in equipment and irreplaceable data. Cole found her sitting on the shed steps, staring at her phone where the inventory glowed like an accusation. Insurance will cover the equipment, he said, but not the data, not the samples. I'll have to start over, recapture every animal, redraw, blood, rebuild the entire database. Emma's voice was hollow. Breeding season starts in 2 weeks. By the time I finish recapturing, it'll be too late for this year's foals. We lose a generation. Cole sat beside her. Then we work faster. We've done it once, we can do it again. With what equipment? The microscope alone takes 3 weeks to ship. I'll buy one locally, pay extra for rush delivery on everything else. We'll have you operational in 72 hours. Emma looked at him. Cole, this could happen again. Whoever did this could come back, destroy the new equipment. You can't keep throwing money at... Watch me. His jaw was set. Whitmore thinks he can intimidate us by destroying your work. He's wrong. Every time he tears something down, we build it back stronger. That's not sustainable. Neither is giving up. Red appeared from the barn, expression dark. Boss, you need to see this. They followed him to the north pasture fence. Someone had cut the wire, pulled back a 50-foot section. Cole's prize breeding cattle, registered Angus worth thousands per head, had wandered through the gap during the night. They'd been driven further north, scattered across federal land where recovering them would take days of work. Coordinated, Red said. Lab break-in as distraction, cattle theft as the real damage. Whoever did this knows ranch operations. Cole pulled out his radio, called his hands. Frank, Luis, get horses saddled. We've got cattle scattered across the high country. Red, contact Livestock Association, report the break. I want this on record. While the men mobilized, Emma stood at the gap in the fence, understanding settling over her like cold water. The vandalism wasn't random vindictiveness. It was strategic, hitting Cole's operation at multiple points, forcing him to choose between protecting her research and protecting his ranch. Divide and conquer, Cole returned, reading her expression. Don't even think it. Think what? That you should leave. That you're putting the ranch at risk. Emma met his eyes. Am I wrong? You're not responsible for Thomas Whitmore being a vindictive bastard. Cole's voice was hard. This isn't about you. It's about me choosing something he couldn't control. He'd find another way to come at me whether you were here or not. You don't know that. I know Thomas Whitmore. I've known him for 40 years. Cole took her shoulders, forced her to look at him. When we were kids, he wanted to be class president. I ran against him, won. He spent the rest of high school making my life miserable. Rumors vandalism got me suspended twice for fights he started. That's who he is. He doesn't forget, doesn't forgive, and doesn't stop until he wins, or you're destroyed. So what do? We don't give him the satisfaction of seeing us break. Cole released her, turned to survey his scattered operation. You rebuild your lab. I'll recover my cattle. And we document everything, every incident, every act of sabotage, until we have enough evidence to bury him in court. If the courts aren't already in his pocket, then we find ones that aren't. Federal judges, EPA investigators, anyone with jurisdiction he can't buy. Cole's expression was steel. I've spent 8 years being passive, accepting things I couldn't change. That ends now. Emma wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe they could fight wealth and corruption with determination and documentation. But standing at that cut fence watching ranch hands prepare for days of cattle recovery, she felt the weight of forces larger than anything she'd faced before. This wasn't a scientific problem with a scientific solution. This was war. The next 3 weeks were a blur of reconstruction and resistance. Cole spent $18,000 rush ordering equipment. The new microscope arrived in 6 days instead of 3 weeks. Emma worked around the clock, rebuilding her database, recapturing horses, redrawing blood samples. They installed security cameras around the lab, motion sensors on the doors, hired a night watchman. The cattle were recovered, but it took 8 days and cost Cole $5,000 in hired helicopter time to spot them in the mountain wilderness. 2 calves were lost, predation probably, though no one found the bodies. And through it all, Thomas Whitmore stayed invisible. No confrontations, no direct threats. Just a lawyer's letter delivered via certified mail. Notice of intent to sue for breach of contract. The engagement between Diana Whitmore and Cole Mitchell constituted a binding verbal agreement with associated business considerations. Termination without cause entitles the Whitmore family to compensation for damages estimated at $2.5 million. Settlement negotiations may commence upon receipt of this notice. Cole's lawyer responded with a 2-word letter, prove it. But the message was clear. Whitmore was building a legal case while conducting guerrilla sabotage. He'd fight them in court and in darkness, attacking from every angle until something broke. Emma pushed fear down and focused on work. She recaptured 12 horses in 2 weeks. Rebuilt genetic profiles, started seeing patterns emerge from the data again. The herd's breeding season had started, stallions fighting for dominance, mares coming into estrus, and Emma documented everything with renewed urgency. Cole worked beside her most days, helping with captures, hauling equipment, keeping watch while she drew blood. They fell into partnership that felt natural as breathing, anticipating each other's needs, communicating in gestures and glances, moving through the landscape like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. And at night, back at the ranch, they fell into each other. It started carefully, Emma staying late in Cole's study, talking over coffee that turned into wine. Then staying later, conversations shifting from horses to histories to hopes. Then Cole walking her back to the guest cabin, kisses at the door that deepened into invitations inside. The first time they made love, Emma felt like she was mapping terrain, learning the scars on his body, the places where old injuries lived, the way his breath caught when she touched him. Cole was gentle, almost hesitant, as if afraid he'd break her or wake up and find this was another loss. After lying in the narrow bed with moonlight striping the quilts, Emma traced the surgical scar on his hip. Does it hurt? She asked. Sometimes, cold weather, overwork. Price of stupidity. Cole's voice was quiet. The rodeo circuit is hell on bodies. Thought I was invincible. The bull that threw me taught me different. Tell me about it. The accident. Cole was silent so long Emma thought he wouldn't answer. Then Cheyenne Frontier Days, July 2017. I drew a bull named Gravedigger, rank animal, through everyone who tried him. I lasted 6 seconds before he spun me. Off came down on my pelvis with 1,500 pounds of hatred. Felt the bone snap, tried to get up, couldn't move my legs. Thought I was paralyzed. He paused. Spent 3 months in hospital. 5 surgeries. Doctors kept saying I was lucky. Lucky. I wasn't paralyzed, lucky the internal bleeding stopped, lucky to be alive. Didn't feel lucky. When did they tell you about the sterility? After the third surgery. Urologist came in, very professional, explained the pelvic fracture had damaged blood vessels to the testicles, caused tissue death. They'd done hormone tests, sperm count came back 0. He said it was permanent, told me I should consider my options, adoption, surrogacy, acceptance. Cole's hand found hers in the darkness. I chose acceptance. Seemed easier than hope. Emma laced their fingers together. And now I have hope, and it's terrifying. Why blind mum? Because hoping means you can be disappointed. Acceptance was safe. He turned to face her. Us the possibility of a future I thought was gone. It's all so fragile. Whitmore could destroy it. The ranch could fail. You could wake up and realize I'm too old, too damaged, too... Emma kissed him quiet. Stop. You're none of those things. I'm 61, you're 29. That's not something I care about. Emma propped herself on one elbow. Cole, I spent my 20s trying to prove myself to people who didn't value me. I dated men my own age who were intimidated by my work, threatened by my education, wanted me to be smaller so they could feel bigger. You're the first person who's ever made me feel like I'm exactly enough. Cole cupped her face. You're more than enough. You're everything. They made love again slower this time, and Emma thought about the ways bodies tell truth, how he touched her like she was precious, how his breath hitched when she whispered his name, how afterward he held her like letting go would unmake him. This was dangerous, foolish, probably doomed. Emma had never felt more certain of anything in her life. On day 23 of the reconstruction period, the second attack came. Emma was in town Billings picking up supplies when her phone rang. Cole's voice was tight. Get back here. Now. What happened? Sheriff showed up with a warrant. Says you're under investigation for equipment theft. Emma's blood went cold. What? He's searching the lab now. Took your computer's files, everything. Emma, they're saying you stole $50,000 worth of university property, sold it to fund personal research. That's insane. All my equipment was destroyed in the break-in. They're saying you staged the break-in, filed false insurance claims, that the equipment never existed, you embezzled the money. Cole's voice was strained. There's a warrant for your arrest. Emma pulled over to hands shaking. Cole, I know you didn't, but Emma, listen to me carefully. Don't come back to the ranch. They're waiting for you. Come to Red's place instead, the cabin on Route 89, you know where it is. We'll figure this out with lawyers present. This is Whitmore. He's framing me. I know, but right now we play by the rules, do this legally. Red's already called my attorney. She's on her way. Just get to the cabin, stay out of sight until we can sort this. Emma's mind reeled. Equipment theft, embezzlement. These were felonies charges that could destroy her career, land her in prison, erase everything she'd worked for. Emma, you still there? Yeah, I'm going to Red's. She checked her rearview mirror, paranoid suddenly that she was being followed. Cole, if they arrest me, they won't. We'll get ahead of this. Just trust me. Emma hung up, drove too fast down secondary roads toward Red's hunting cabin. Her phone rang again, university number. She let it go to voicemail. Rang again, Boulder County Sheriff, ignored it. By the time she reached the cabin, a weathered structure hidden in pines 20 miles from Cole's ranch, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely turn the key. Red opened the door before she knocked. Inside, quick. Emma stumbled in. The cabin was sparse cot wood stove table with maps spread across it. Cole stood by the window phone to his ear, expression dark. She just got here, he said into the phone. How fast can you get to us? Pause. Okay, we'll wait. He hung up, crossed to Emma. Lawyer's 2 hours out. Boulder County Sheriff wants you to turn yourself in for questioning. They're calling it voluntary cooperation. It's not voluntary if they have a warrant. Lawyer says don't go in without her present. We stall until she gets here. Cole took Emma's shoulders. Tell me everything. Every piece of equipment you ordered, who authorized it, what documentation exists. We need to prove you didn't embezzle anything. Emma forced herself to think through panic. Cole, you paid for the replacement equipment. You have receipts, bank records. That proves I didn't steal university funds. Unless they claim you manipulated me into covering for you. Jesus Christ, Emma paced. This is insane. How am I supposed to prove I didn't steal things that were actually destroyed? Insurance company documented the break-in. They sent an investigator, photographed everything. And if Whitmore paid off the investigator, if the insurance company is in on it, Cole's silence was answer enough. Red came back inside, spat into a tin cup. Just got off the phone with Frank. Sheriff's at the ranch with 3 deputies. They're tearing the guest cabin apart, looking for stolen property. Also got a call from Joe Crow. Tribal police got contacted by Boulder County asking if they'd seen you on reservation land. They're treating this like you're a flight risk. I haven't fled anywhere. I've been in town buying groceries. They're building a narrative, Cole said. Woman steals university funds, stages break-in to cover tracks, flees when caught. They'll use your relationship with me as motive, claim you were planning to disappear into ranch life, figured you could hide here. Emma felt trapped in a nightmare. How is this legal? Don't they need actual evidence? They have evidence. Forged documents, probably, but documents. Red pulled up something on his phone, showed Emma. University filed a report 3 days ago. Says their internal audit discovered discrepancies in your research account equipment purchases that don't match delivery records. They're saying you ordered expensive items, had them shipped to fake addresses, then sold them on the black market. Emma read the screen, horror mounting. The report was detailed, specific item numbers, dates, dollar amounts. Fake purchase orders with her signature. Shipping manifests to addresses she'd never heard of. Someone put a lot of work into this, she whispered. Whitmore has resources. Cole's voice was hard. He probably started building this case the day I broke the engagement. Planted evidence, paid people off, created a paper trail that makes you look guilty. And there's nothing we can do. We fight it. We prove it's fabricated. But Emma, Cole took her hands. You need to prepare yourself. Even if we prove you're innocent, this will follow you. The university might not take you back. Other institutions will see the charges, won't care about acquittal. Your reputation is damaged. Emma pulled away, anger replacing fear. So Whitmore wins. He can't beat us directly, so he destroys my career, makes me radioactive to the scientific community. Even if I'm exonerated, I'm ruined. Not ruined, delayed. Cole's expression was fierce. We'll rebuild your reputation the same way we rebuilt your lab, piece by piece, with patience and proof. But first, we get you through this without going to jail. Emma wanted to believe him, wanted to believe truth mattered more than money, that justice existed somewhere in this corrupt system. But sitting in that cabin waiting for a lawyer she couldn't afford while false charges circled like wolves, she felt hope crumbling. Outside, the Montana wind picked up rattling windows, and Emma understood viscerally what Cole had meant about fragility. Everything they'd built, the research, the relationship, the possibility of a future, hung by threads that Thomas Whitmore was methodically cutting. The lawyer arrived at sunset. Margaret Chen was 50s, sharp-eyed, wearing a suit that cost more than Emma's monthly salary. She set a briefcase on Red's table, pulled out a recorder. "Mr. Carter, I'm Margaret Chen, retained by Mr. Mitchell to represent you in this matter. Before we proceed, I need to be clear about something. These charges are serious. Equipment theft, embezzlement, fraud. If convicted, you're looking at 5 to 10 years federal prison. Do you understand that?" Emma nodded, mouth dry. "Good. Now tell me everything. Start from when you first arrived in Montana." Emma talked for 2 hours. Margaret recorded it all, occasionally interrupting with sharp questions. When Emma finished, Margaret reviewed her notes. "Okay, here's where we are. The university has documentation showing equipment purchases in your name shipped to locations you never authorized. Someone has been forging your signature, creating fake accounts, building a paper trail over months. This isn't amateur work. It's sophisticated fraud, probably involving multiple conspirators." "Whitmore," Cole said. "Probably, but we'll need to prove it." Margaret looked at Emma. "The sheriff wants you to come in for questioning tomorrow morning. I advise you to comply. Refusing makes you look guilty. We'll go in together. You'll answer questions with me present, and we'll be polite and cooperative. And if they arrest her," Cole's voice was tight, "then I argue for bail, which shouldn't be hard, given Dr. Carter's lack of criminal history and community ties. But I'll be honest, this judge is known for being tough on white-collar crime. If the prosecution pushes hard, he might remand her to custody pending trial." Emma felt sick. "Meaning I could go to jail tomorrow?" "It's possible. I'll do everything I can to prevent it, but we need to prepare for that outcome. Margaret pulled out more papers. I've filed motions to examine the university's audit records, subpoena bank records for the fake accounts, and compel testimony from the insurance investigator who documented your lab break-in. But these things take time, weeks, possibly months. I don't have months. Breeding season is now. If I lose more time, the Mustangs... Dr. Carter, I understand your research is important, but right now staying out of prison is more important. Margaret's tone was firm, but not unkind. We'll fight this, but you need to be realistic. Even if we prove your innocence, the legal process is slow. You won't be back in the field for a while. Emma looked at Cole, saw her own helplessness reflected in his face. They'd been outmaneuvered. Whitmore had found the perfect weapon, not direct violence, but the bureaucratic machinery of law, slow and implacable, and nearly impossible to fight. What do I do? Emma asked quietly. You cooperate. You stay calm. You let me handle the legal strategy. Margaret began packing her briefcase. And Dr. Carter, one more thing. Your relationship with Mr. Mitchell will be used against you. The prosecution will claim you seduced a wealthy man to fund your embezzlement, that this was all a long con. Be prepared for that narrative. Emma's face burned. It's not we didn't. I know, but perception matters. A young, attractive woman, an older, wealthy man, money going missing, it plays into stereotypes. We'll counter it, but it's going to be ugly. After Margaret left, Emma sat in silence while Cole and Red made plans for the next day. Security measures, media management, contingencies if she was arrested. The conversation washed over her, distant and unreal. This was happening. She was going to be questioned like a criminal, possibly jailed, definitely destroyed professionally. And there was nothing she could do except endure it. Cole crouched in front of her chair. Emma, look at me. She met his eyes. We're going to fight this, he said. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, you're not alone. Cole, this could drag out for years. Your ranch, your reputation, everything you've built associating with me is going to taint it all. Whitmore will make sure of that. Let him try. You should distance yourself, publicly. Tell people I deceived you, that you're cooperating with the investigation. It'll protect... No. Cole's voice was steel. I'm not abandoning you to make Whitmore's job easier. We stand together or we don't stand at all. Red spat. Boss is right. Whitmore's respect strength. Nothing else. You show weakness, they'll tear you apart. You show them you can't be broken. Eventually they'll move on to easier targets. How long is eventually? However long it takes. Red met her eyes. Question is, Dr. Carter, are you strong enough to last? Emma thought about James dead in a freezing creek because he believed in work that mattered. She thought about the Mustang herd dying invisible deaths from inbreeding because no one fought for them. She thought about Cole, who'd spent 8 years in resignation before finding hope again. I'm strong enough, she said. Good. Red stood. Then get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be hell. Emma spent the night at Red's cabin, lying on the cot, staring at exposed ceiling beams. Cole stayed too, sleeping on the floor near the wood stove, unwilling to leave her alone. Somewhere around 3 a.m., Emma gave up on sleep, went outside. The Montana night was crystalline, stars so thick they looked like snow, cold air sharp in her lungs. She walked to the edge of the clearing, looked toward mountains she couldn't see in the darkness. Can't sleep either. Cole appeared beside her, and thinking about tomorrow, about what happens if they arrest me. Then I post bail and get you out. And if they set bail too high, I put up the ranch as collateral. Cole said it matter-of-factly, like offering to mortgage everything he owned was no more significant than loaning a coat. Emma turned to stare at him. You can't do that. I can, and I will. Cole, if I'm convicted, you lose everything. You won't be convicted because you're innocent and we'll prove it. He took her hands. Emma, I spent 8 years protecting the ranch like it was sacred, but it's just land, buildings, money. You're real. This, he pressed her hand to his chest, is real. I'm not losing it because some corrupt asshole wants revenge. Emma felt tears threaten. I don't know what I did to deserve you. You rode into a blizzard trying to save things no one else cared about. You dragged yourself through hypothermia because giving up wasn't an option. You looked at a broken old man and saw someone worth saving. Cole's voice was rough. You don't have to deserve me. You just have to let me stand with you. They held each other in the darkness, and Emma let herself believe for just this moment that love could be stronger than corruption, that standing together meant something against impossible odds. Dawn came too quickly. The Boulder County Sheriff's Office occupied a low brick building on the edge of town, surrounded by patrol vehicles and American flags. Emma walked through the front doors at 9 a.m., Margaret at her side, Cole and Red waiting in the parking lot. A deputy led them to an interview room. Gray walls, metal table, the cliché, fluorescent lighting that made everyone look guilty. Sheriff Boyd Marlowe entered 10 minutes later. He was 50's weathered face wedding ring that caught the light. He smiled at Emma like they were old friends. Dr. Carter, thank you for coming in. I'm Sheriff Marlowe. I know this is unpleasant, but we just have a few questions to clear up some confusion. My client is here voluntarily, Margaret said. She's prepared to cooperate fully, but I want to be clear she maintains her innocence in these allegations. Of course, of course. Marlowe sat and opened a folder. Dr. Carter, let's start with the basics. You were contracted by the University of Denver to conduct wildlife research, correct? Yes. And as part of that contract, you were authorized to purchase equipment, charge it to the university's research account. Within approved budgets, yes. Can you tell me about the equipment purchases you made between January and March of this year? Emma detailed everything, the microscope, the dart guns, the GPS trackers. Margaret took notes. Marlowe listened politely, then slid papers across the table. These are requisition forms bearing your signature. They show purchases totaling approximately $47,000 shipped to addresses in Idaho Falls, Spokane, and Bozeman. Can you explain those? Emma examined the documents. Her signature, but wrong, too neat, the loops on the E slightly off. I didn't sign these, someone forged my signature. That's a serious allegation. Do you have proof of forgery? The signatures are too perfect. I write quickly, sloppily. These look like someone traced my name slowly. Marlowe made notes. And can you explain why equipment was shipped to addresses you've never been to? I can't explain it because I didn't authorize those shipments. Emma kept her voice level. Someone set up fake delivery locations, forged my signature, and stole from the university. Then they framed me for it. Who would do that? Thomas Whitmore. Marlowe's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. That's quite an accusation. The Whitmores are respected members of this community, and they're angry that Cole Mitchell broke his engagement with Diana Whitmore. This is retaliation. Can you prove Thomas Whitmore is involved? Not yet, but the break-in at my lab happened days after the engagement ended. My equipment was destroyed, my data stolen. Then these fraud allegations appear. The timing isn't coincidence. Marlowe leaned back. Dr. Carter, I've reviewed the insurance investigation into that break-in. The investigator's report notes several irregularities. No forced entry on the padlock. It was opened with a key or left unlocked. No witnesses, no physical evidence of intruders. The damage pattern is consistent with someone trying to make it look like a burglary. You're saying I destroyed my own equipment. I'm saying the evidence suggests the break-in may have been staged. Emma felt rage building. Why would I destroy equipment I needed for my work? Insurance fraud. You file a false claim, collect on the policy, use the money to cover up embezzlement. Marlowe's tone was almost sympathetic. Dr. Carter, we see this pattern a lot. Someone gets in financial trouble, makes bad decisions, then tries to cover it up with increasingly desperate moves. If you cooperate now, tell us where the equipment went, who helped you, the DA might be lenient. I didn't do anything wrong. Then why were you withdrawing large amounts of cash from your personal account over the past 3 months? $10,000 in January, $8,000 in February, $12,000 in March. Marlowe slid bank statements across the table. Where did that money go? Emma stared at the statements, her account number, her name, but transactions she didn't recognize. I didn't make those withdrawals. Your signature is on the withdrawal slips. Then someone forged those too. Dr. Carter, that's a lot of a forgery. Don't you think it's more likely you're simply not being truthful? Margaret cut in. Sheriff, my client has answered your questions. Unless you have evidence beyond forged documents and fabricated bank records, we're done here. We have testimony. Marlowe pulled out another document. A pawn shop owner in Idaho Falls identified you from a photo. Says you sold him scientific equipment in February. We have video surveillance from the shop. Emma's heart sank. That's impossible. I've never been to Idaho Falls. We'll review the footage, of course. Marlowe stood. Ricardo, I'm going to recommend to the DA that charges be filed. You're not under arrest yet, but I strongly suggest you don't leave the state. Margaret gathered her papers. We'll be filing motions to examine all the evidence you've mentioned. If it's as fabricated as I suspect, Sheriff, you're going to look very foolish. They left the interview room, walked through the building in tense silence. Outside, Cole and Red waited by Cole's truck. Well, Cole asked. They're going to charge her, Margaret said. Probably within 48 hours. The evidence is too coordinated. Someone spent months building this case. Forged signatures, fake bank withdrawals, planted testimony. It's sophisticated. Can we fight it? Yes, but Dr. Carter needs to prepare for arrest. When they charge her, they'll issue a warrant. She'll need to turn herself in, we'll argue bail, and then we start the long process of discovery and defense. Emma leaned against the truck, feeling reality close in. How long until trial? 6 months minimum, possibly a year if there are delays. A year, the Mustang breeding season would come and go. The BLM survey would happen without her. Thomas Whitmore would have time to dismantle everything. I need to call the university, Emma said. Explain what's happening before they hear it from the press. They already know, Margaret said gently. They filed the initial complaint. Dr. Carter, I'm sorry, but the university is not on your side. They think you stole from them. Emma closed her eyes, her career, her research, her reputation, all of it collapsing. Cole's hand found hers. We'll get through this. But for the first time, Emma wasn't sure she believed him. The charges were filed 30 hours later. Emma was at the ranch. Cole had insisted she stay there despite the risk, didn't want her alone when Margaret called. Boulder County DA just issued the warrant. 5 counts: embezzlement, equipment, theft, insurance fraud, forgery, wire fraud. They're charging you as an adult federal offenses. Margaret's voice was professional, but Emma heard sympathy underneath. You need to turn yourself in. I've arranged with the sheriff's office to surrender tomorrow morning at 9. They'll process you. We'll go before a judge for bail hearing by noon. What's bail going to be? Hard to say. These are serious charges, but you have no prior strong community ties. I'm hoping $50,000 or less. I don't have $50,000. I do, Cole said. He'd been listening on speaker. Whatever the bail is, I'll post it. Mr. Mitchell, I should warn you, if Dr. Carter flees, you lose that money. She won't flee. I won't, Emma confirmed, but her voice shook. After Margaret hung up, Emma sat in Cole's study staring at nothing. Tomorrow she'd be arrested, fingerprinted, photographed, put in a cell. Her name would be in the news, local researcher charged with embezzlement. Every colleague she'd ever worked with would see it. Her father would see it. She thought about calling him, explaining, but couldn't summon the energy. He'd probably say this was what came of choosing lesser science. That if she'd gone into his field, none of this would have happened. Cole sat beside her. What are you thinking? That I ruined my life by coming here. That James died for nothing. That I should have stayed in Denver and done boring lab work and never tried to save anything. You don't believe that. Right now I do. Emma looked at him. Cole, I'm going to be arrested tomorrow. My career is over. Even if we win, I'll be known as the scientist who was charged with fraud. No institution will touch me. The Mustang herd is going to die because I couldn't protect them. Everything I've worked for is gone. Not everything. You still have. Don't say I have you. You can't be my consolation prize. Emma stood paced. I need to be able to stand on my own, have work that matters, contribute something to the world. I can't just be the woman who destroyed her career for a man. That's not what's happening, isn't it? I came here for research. I stayed because of you. And now I'm paying the price for that choice. Emma's voice cracked. Maybe Diana was right. Maybe I am a scorned woman who couldn't take a hint. Emma. Cole stood, took her shoulders. Stop. Diana's not right about anything. You're here because you believe in saving things worth saving. The Mustangs, yes, but also yourself. You told me you spent years trying to prove yourself to people who didn't value you. Coming here was you choosing yourself. And look how that turned out. It's not over yet. It feels over. Cole pulled her close, and Emma let herself break, crying against his chest, grieving for the career she'd lost, the work that would remain undone, the future that had seemed so bright 6 weeks ago. Outside, the Montana evening settled into darkness, and in his office in Billings, Thomas Whitmore toasted his daughter with expensive scotch, celebrating the destruction of the woman who'd dared to challenge them. The pieces were in motion. The trap had closed, and all that remained was watching them struggle. Emma surrendered the next morning at 9. The sheriff's office processed her efficiently. Fingerprints, mugshot, personal effects confiscated. They put her in a holding cell, gray concrete metal bench, smell of disinfectant and despair. Margaret sat in the visitor area reviewing notes for the bail hearing. Cole wasn't allowed in. He waited outside Red with him, both men silent as statues. At noon, they brought Emma before Judge Harriet Stone. The courtroom was small, wood-paneled flag behind the bench. Emma stood in county-issued orange scrubs, hands cuffed, while the DA read charges. Each count felt like a blow: embezzlement, theft, fraud. The words painted her as criminal, greedy, calculating. Margaret countered with Emma's credentials, lack of priors, community ties. Argued she was flight risk because her life was here, her work, her relationship, her future. The DA argued the opposite: Emma had stolen money, staged crimes, was sophisticated enough to flee if given chance. Judge Stone listened impassively. When both sides finished, she leaned back. Ms. Chen, your client is facing serious charges, federal crimes with significant prison time. The evidence presented suggests sophisticated fraud over several months. Why should I trust she'll remain in jurisdiction? Because Dr. Carter's entire career is built on integrity, Your Honor. She's a scientist, not a criminal. These charges are fabricated by powerful interests seeking to silence her conservation work. She deserves the chance to defend herself from freedom, not a cell. The DA makes compelling arguments about flight risk. Dr. Carter has passport, surrenders it to the court. She'll submit to GPS monitoring, regular check-ins, any conditions Your Honor deems necessary. Judge Stone made notes. Emma stood trembling, trying to project calm she didn't feel. Finally, bail is set at $200,000. Emma's heart dropped. $200,000. She didn't have that. Couldn't ask Cole to risk that much. But Margaret simply nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. Defense will post bail within the hour. They led Emma back to holding. An hour later, a deputy came, handed her a property envelope. You're free to go. Bail's been posted. Emma changed back into her clothes, walked out to the lobby. Cole and Red waited, Red counting cash he'd just handed to the clerk. $200,000, Emma said numbly. Cole, that's handled. Let's go. They walked out into afternoon sun. Emma breathed free air, felt sick with the weight of debt and obligation. In the truck, Cole drove while Red rode shotgun. Nobody spoke until they were back on ranch roads. Thank you, Emma finally said. I don't know how I'll ever— You don't owe me anything, Cole said. We're in this together. But Emma felt the weight of it, $200,000 on her head, a man who'd put up everything to keep her free. It should have felt romantic, supportive. Instead, it felt like drowning. Back at the ranch, Margaret was waiting. We need to talk strategy, she said. Discovery starts next week. I'll be requesting every piece of evidence the prosecution has: bank records, signatures, testimony. While I do that, we need to investigate on our own. Find proof of forgery, establish timeline showing you couldn't have made those transactions, identify who's actually behind this. How? Emma asked. Forensic accountants, handwriting analysts, private investigators. It won't be cheap. We're looking at another $100,000 in defense costs minimum. Emma felt sick. I don't have that. I don't have anything. I do, Cole said again. Cole, you can't keep. I can and I will. Margaret, do what needs doing. Send me the bills. After Margaret left, Emma stood in Cole's study looking at photos of his daughter. The girl had died doing work she believed in. Emma was being destroyed for the same reason. I should leave, she said quietly. Cole, who'd been pouring coffee, went still. What? Leave Montana. Go back to Denver or anywhere else. If I'm gone, Whitmore has no reason to keep coming after you. The ranch will be safe. No, Cole, no. He set down the coffee pot. You think running will protect me? Whitmore will find other ways to attack. And you'll be alone fighting these charges without support, without resources. That's what he wants: to isolate you, break you. I'm already broken. You're not. You're scared and hurt and angry, but you're not broken. Cole crossed to her. Emma, I know you're used to handling things alone, but this is too big. You need help. Let me help. At what cost? Your ranch, your savings, your future? My future is with you. Whether that's here or somewhere else. Whether we have money or land or nothing. You're my future. Don't you understand that? Emma wanted to believe him. But standing in that study facing $100,000 legal bills and charges that could send her to prison, she felt like a burden Cole didn't deserve. I need some air, she said and walked out. She ended up at the equipment shed her Moab, the place she'd spent months building something meaningful. Now it sat dark abandoned. The Mustang capture season was passing without her. The data she'd collected was gone. Everything she'd worked for had evaporated. Emma sat on the steps, head in hands, and let herself feel the full weight of defeat. That's where Red found her an hour later. He sat down beside her. Boss is worried, thinks you're planning to run. Maybe I should. Maybe, but running means Whitmore wins. He's already won. Not yet. Red pulled out his phone, showed her something. Been doing some digging, called in favors from my military days, people who know how to find things. Look. Emma studied the screen. It showed financial records, wire transfers, shell companies, complex money movements. What am I looking at? Thomas Whitmore's private accounts. He's been paying people, lots of people. Sheriff Marlowe got $20,000 deposited to his personal account 3 weeks ago. The insurance investigator, who said your break-in was staged, $30,000. That pawn shop owner in Idaho Falls who identified you, $15,000. Red spat again. Whitmore's buying testimony, bribing officials, creating fake evidence, and he's leaving a trail. Emma felt hope spark. Can we use this? If we can prove it, yes. Problem is getting access to Whitmore's financial records requires subpoenas, legal authority. Margaret's working on it, but it takes time. Time we don't have. Maybe not legally, Red met her eyes. But there are other ways to get information. What are you suggesting? That sometimes when you're fighting people who don't follow rules, you gotta get creative. Red stood. I'm not saying break laws, but I'm saying there are people who owe me favors, people who can access things regular folks can't. Give me a week, I'll have evidence. Real evidence. Red, if you get caught, won't get caught, been doing this kind of work since before you were born. He held out a hand, pulled her up. Question is, Dr. Carter, you ready to fight dirty? Emma thought about James dead because he believed science could save things. She thought about the Mustangs dying because no one fought hard enough. She thought about Cole risking everything because he believed in her. I'm ready, she said. Good, then let's go to war. They walked back to the main house and Emma felt something shift inside her, grief and fear transmuting into rage and determination. Whitmore thought he'd beaten her. He was wrong. The fight was just beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, Red worked his contacts while Emma and Margaret built the legal defense. Margaret subpoenaed bank records, compelled testimony, requested forensic analysis of the forged signatures. The prosecution fought every request, claiming defense was fishing for non-existent evidence. Judge Stone mostly sided with the prosecution, Whitmore's influence, extending even to the bench. But cracks started appearing. The pawn shop owner's testimony had inconsistencies. He'd identified Emma from a photo, but couldn't describe what she'd been wearing, what vehicle she drove, whether she'd been alone. Under pressure from Margaret's questioning, he admitted his memory was fuzzy. The insurance investigator's report contained errors, timestamps that didn't match descriptions of damage that contradicted photographic evidence. When Margaret deposed him, he became defensive, evasive. And the forged signatures under forensic analysis showed patterns consistent with tracing someone had used Emma's real signature as a template, copying it slowly to create false documents. Margaret compiled it all into motions to dismiss. Judge Stone denied them, but Emma saw doubt creeping in. The case wasn't as airtight as the prosecution claimed. Meanwhile, Red's investigation produced treasure. He returned one evening with a thumb drive, set it on Cole's desk. Financial records. Shows Whitmore paying off witnesses, bribing officials, funding shell companies that created the fake transactions in Emma's name. It's all here. How did you get this? Emma asked. Better you don't know, but it's admissible if we're clever about how we introduce it. Margaret reviewed the files, eyes widening. This is substantial. If we can authenticate this, it proves conspiracy. But red, if you obtained this illegally, didn't obtain nothing illegal. Got an anonymous tip from a concerned citizen. That citizen happens to have worked in Whitmore Mining's accounting department, has access to executive records, and decided his conscience couldn't stay quiet. Red smiled. His name is sealed, but his information is solid. We'll need corroboration, other witnesses' paper trails. Already on it. The accountant is willing to testify if we protect his identity. And I got two other Whitmore employees, one in mining operations, one in legal, who'll confirm the companies have been conducting what they call opposition research on people who cross them. Standard practice according to them. Emma felt the case shifting. This could work. We could actually prove Whitmore framed me. Proving it and convincing a judge are different things, Margaret warned. Stone's been ruling against us consistently. She might suppress this evidence claim chain of custody is compromised. Then we go over her head. Federal court civil rights violation, whatever it takes. Cole had been quiet until now. Emma's constitutional rights have been violated. Due process denied. That's federal jurisdiction. Margaret considered. It's risky. Federal judges don't like when you imply state courts are corrupt. But you might be right. Let me research precedent. They worked late into the night building strategy, finding angles. Emma felt hope returning, fragile, tenuous, but real. She stepped outside for air, found Cole at the fence line, looking toward mountains invisible in darkness. Thank you, she said, for all of this, for not giving up. Wasn't going to. Cole turned to her. Emma, when this is over, and it will be over, what do you want? If you could have any future, what would it look like? Emma thought about it. I want to finish the Mustang study, prove intervention works, get the herd protected. Then, I don't know, maybe teach pass on what I've learned. Maybe stay here, keep working conservation projects. She looked at him. Maybe build something that lasts. With me, if you'll have me. Cole pulled her close. I'd have you in any world, any circumstance. Rich or poor, here or anywhere. You are the best thing that's happened to me in 8 years. They stood holding each other, and Emma let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they could win this. 2 days later, everything changed again. Emma was reviewing case files when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. To Carter, female voice shaking. This is Diana Whitmore. I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Emma's first instinct was to hang up, but something in Diana's voice, fear maybe, or desperation, made her pause. Why would I talk to you? Because my father is planning to kill you. Emma's blood went cold. What? He's done with legal battles. You're costing him too much time, too much exposure. He's hiring someone to make it look like an accident. Please, I need to meet with you. I have information that can help your case, but I can't do this over the phone. This is insane. I know how it sounds, but I'm telling the truth. Meet me, tonight. The old mine shaft on Route 89, the one that's been closed for years. Come alone, don't tell anyone. If my father finds out I'm helping you, he'll... Her voice broke. Please, I don't have anyone else to turn to. Emma's mind raced. This could be trap. Diana working with her father, luring Emma somewhere remote to... What? Kill her, frame her for something else. But what if it was real? What if Diana was genuinely breaking with her family, offering evidence that could end this? Why are you doing this? Emma asked. Because I'm pregnant. Diana's voice was barely whisper. And the father isn't Cole. It's someone my family destroyed. If they find out, they'll force me to abort or worse. I need to get away, and I need leverage to keep them from coming after me. Your case helping you is my leverage. Emma made a decision she knew was probably stupid. Okay. When midnight, the mine entrance is marked with old danger signs. Come alone. I'll explain everything. Diana hung up. Emma sat staring at her phone, weighing options. She should tell Cole, tell Red, tell Margaret. Going alone to a midnight meeting with Diana Whitmore was the definition of foolish. But what if Diana was telling the truth? What if Thomas Whitmore really was planning to have Emma killed? What if this was her only chance to get the evidence she needed? Emma looked at the clock. 8 p.m., 4 hours to decide. She spent them researching the mine location, reading about Thomas Whitmore's history, looking for any indication that Diana's story could be true. She found articles about Whitmore Mining's aggressive business practices, lawsuits from competitors who'd been driven out of business, one suspicious death of a whistleblower that had been ruled accidental. The pattern was there. Whitmore destroyed opposition, one way or another. At 11:30, Emma made her choice. She left a note for Colgan for a drive to clear my head. Back by morning. Vague enough not to alarm him, immediately specific enough that he'd know she hadn't fled. Then she drove into the night toward a meeting that would either save her or destroy her completely. The old mine shaft sat 30 miles from the ranch down a dirt road that barely qualified as a road anymore. Emma's headlights cut through darkness, illuminating rusted warning signs. Danger, no trespassing, unstable ground. She parked, killed the engine. The silence was absolute. Diana's SUV sat 50 yards away, lights off. Emma approached cautiously, hand on her phone, ready to call for help. Diana stepped out of the shadows, looking nothing like the polished woman Emma remembered. She wore jeans and a hoodie, face pale, eyes red from crying. "You came," Diana said, relief in her voice. "I'm here, talk fast." Diana pulled out a phone, pulled up files. "These are my father's communications. Emails, texts, recorded calls. He's been orchestrating your frame-up for months, paying witnesses, fabricating evidence, bribing officials. It's all documented." Emma took the phone, scanned files. Her heart raced. This was it, proof of conspiracy enough to destroy Whitmore's case. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because I'm done being his weapon." Diana's voice shook. "I told you I'm pregnant. The father is Rafe Sutton Rancher my father destroyed 2 years ago. Rafe proposed, I wanted to say yes, but my father..." She broke down. "He had Rafe killed, made it look like suicide. I've been trapped and ever since doing whatever my father demanded because I was too scared to fight back." Emma felt unexpected sympathy. "Diana, if what you're saying is true, you're in danger. I know, that's why I need your help. You give this evidence to your lawyer, exposing my father, bring him down. In exchange, I testify against him. Full cooperation. But I need witness protection resources to disappear. Can your lawyer arrange that?" "I don't know. Maybe, but..." Headlights blazed from the darkness. 3 vehicles, massive trucks, surrounded them, engines roaring. Doors opened. Men emerged, 6 of them all armed. Thomas Whitmore stepped into the light. "Diana," he said pleasantly, "I'm disappointed." Diana's face went white. "Dad, you thought I wouldn't track your phone, monitor your communications. I've known about this meeting since you called, Dr. Carter." Thomas smiled at Emma. "And you, doctor, so noble, so trusting, walking into obvious traps." Emma's hand went to her pocket. Her phone was gone. She'd set it down to look at Diana's files, hadn't picked it back up. "This is kidnapping," Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. "People know I'm here." "No, they don't. You left a vague note, drove out alone. When you disappear, it'll look like you fled bail." Thomas gestured to his men. "Secure them both." The men moved forward. Emma tried to run, got 3 steps before someone grabbed her, yanked her back. Diana screamed. They were forced into one of the trucks, hands zip-tied. As the vehicle drove into darkness, Emma realized she had made a catastrophic error. She'd walked into exactly the trap she'd feared, and no one knew where she was. The truck drove for what felt like hours, but was probably 30 minutes. Emma's wrists ached from the zip ties, too tight, cutting circulation. Beside her, Diana sat rigid with terror. The men said nothing. Thomas Whitmore rode in a separate vehicle. Finally, they stopped. The door opened, revealing a warehouse, some kind of mining facility, abandoned equipment rusting in corners. The men pulled Emma and Diana out, marched them to a windowless back room. Thomas waited there, sitting in a folding chair, like he was conducting a business meeting. "Ladies," he said, "let's discuss your futures." "Dad, please," Diana started. "Be quiet." Thomas's voice was ice. "Diana, you've betrayed your family, conspired with our enemies, given away proprietary information. Do you understand how serious that is? I was trying to, you were trying to destroy me. Your own father." He stood paced. "I've built an empire, provided for you, educated you, given you every advantage. And this is how you repay me. You killed Rafe. Rafe Sutton was a complication. I removed complications. That's what power requires, difficult choices." Thomas turned to Emma. "And you, Dr. Carter, you should have accepted defeat gracefully, taken the charges, served your time, moved on. But no, You had to keep fighting, digging, turning my own daughter against me. You framed me for crimes I didn't commit, Emma said. You destroyed my career, my research tried to ruin my life. What did you expect me to do? Die quietly. Thomas said it matter-of-factly. That's what weak people do when they're beaten. But you're stubborn, like Mitchell, which means I need more permanent solutions. Emma's stomach dropped. You're going to kill us. I'm going to make you disappear. Both of you. Diana will suffer a tragic accident, grief-stricken. Over her broken engagement, she drove recklessly, went off a cliff, very sad. He looked at Emma. And you, doctor, will simply vanish. Fled bail, probably left the country, forgot about when the next crisis distracts everyone. Cole will know. He'll investigate. Cole Mitchell will be too busy dealing with his own problems. By morning, federal agents will be raiding his ranch on suspicion of harboring a fugitive. His assets will be frozen pending investigation. He'll lose everything fighting charges I've carefully constructed. Thomas smiled. By the time anyone realizes you're not coming back, it won't matter. You'll be dead buried in one of these old mine shafts where no one will ever find you. Diana was crying. Emma felt detached horror. This was really happening. She was going to die in an abandoned warehouse because she'd been stupid enough to trust Diana. Except Diana's phone. Emma had looked at the files but hadn't transferred them to her own device. Did Thomas know the phone existed? Had he confiscated it? Emma glanced at Diana's pocket. The phone's outline was barely visible. Thomas was still talking, explaining his plans with the casual tone of someone discussing weather. Emma tuned him out, thinking frantically. The men had taken Emma's phone, but hadn't searched Diana carefully, probably assumed Thomas had already controlled for that. If Emma could get to Diana's phone text, someone Cole read Margaret before Thomas realized what she was doing. It was a desperate plan, probably futile, but it was something. Emma shifted closer to Diana, using motion of the truck's residual sway as excuse. She leaned against Diana's shoulder, whispering, "Your phone, still have it." Diana's eyes widened fractionally. She gave the tiniest nod. "I need to reach it. Can you shift so your pocket's facing me?" Another microscopic nod. Diana adjusted position, pretending to cry harder, turning so her hoodie pocket was accessible. Emma's bound hands were in front of her body. Stupid of Whitmore's men not to secure them behind her back, but maybe they didn't see two women as threats. Emma worked her fingers into Diana's pocket, felt the phone, pulled it out slowly, hiding it against her thigh. Thomas was turned away, giving instructions to one of his men. Emma fumbled with the phone, got it unlocked. No passcode, thank God, and pulled up messages. Her fingers were numb, hands shaking. She typed with agonizing slowness. "Cole. Thomas has us. Old Mine Route 89. Hurry." She hit send to Cole's number from Diana's contacts, prayed it went through. Then she slipped the phone back into Diana's pocket just as Thomas turned back to them. "Any last words?" he asked pleasantly. Emma met his eyes. "You won't get away with this. Cole knows I was meeting Diana. He'll figure out where we went." "No, he won't, because Diana's phone records will show she texted you from Billings, nowhere near that mine. I have people who handle these details." Thomas nodded to his men. "Take them to Shaft 7. Make it look like they fell during the night. Tragic accident." The men grabbed Emma and Diana, hauled them to their feet. Emma's heart hammered. Had the text sent? Would Cole see it in time? Or would he wake up to federal raids and dead girlfriend? They were being dragged toward the door when one of Whitmore's men checked his phone, frowned. "Boss, we got a problem." "What?" "County sheriff just got a 911 call. Anonymous tip about suspicious activity at this location." Thomas's face darkened. "Show me." The man handed over his phone. Thomas read, then looked at Diana with fury that could melt steel. "You stupid girl, you still had your phone." "I didn't." "Search her." They found Diana's phone in seconds. Thomas looked at the sent message, then at Emma. "Clever, but it doesn't matter. By the time anyone gets here, you'll be gone and I'll be 50 miles away with alibis locked down." He turned to his men. "Do it now and make it fast." They dragged Emma and Diana outside toward the edge of the property where old mine shafts gaped like mouths in the earth. Emma fought, kicked, screamed. It accomplished nothing against men twice her size. They reached Shaft 7, a vertical drop into darkness. Wooden barriers had rotted away years ago. The men positioned Emma at the edge. "Sorry, Doc," one of them said. He sounded almost apologetic. Just business. They shoved. Emma fell. The descent lasted forever and no time at all, darkness and terror, and the certain knowledge that she was about to die. She hit water unexpected, and shocking cold went under, came up gasping. Not a vertical shaft then, a flooded shaft deep enough that the impact hadn't killed her immediately. Above, she heard Diana scream, then splash. Emma treaded water disoriented in complete darkness. Her hands were still bound. She couldn't see anything, couldn't find Diana. Couldn't. A hand grabbed her arm, Diana surfacing beside her. "Oh, I can't swim," Diana gasped. Emma wrapped an arm around Diana's chest, kicked toward what she hoped was a wall. Her hand hit rock. She clung to it, holding Diana up. "Breathe," Emma commanded. "Slow breaths. We're alive." "For how long?" Diana was panicking. "Long enough," Emma forced confidence into her voice. "The text sent. Cole's coming. He can't get here in time. He will. We just have to survive until then." Above, she heard the men talking, discussing whether anyone could survive the fall. Thomas's voice, "Check in 15 minutes. If they're not dead, finish them." Footsteps receding. Emma and Diana clung to the rock wall in darkness and water so cold Emma's teeth chattered. Diana was crying, talking about her baby, about Rafe, about regrets. Emma tuned it out, conserving energy, praying that Cole had gotten the message, that he was on his way, that Whitmore's men wouldn't come back in 15 minutes and find them still alive. Time became meaningless. Emma's muscles screamed from holding Diana up. The cold numbed her extremities. She started to hallucinate, saw lights that weren't there, heard voices in the darkness. Then distantly real voices. "Emma," Cole's voice echoing down the shaft. "Here," Emma screamed. "We're down here." Lights appeared above flashlights, many of them. Ropes dropped down. Red's face appeared over the edge. "Hold on. We're coming down." Red descended on rope, reached them in seconds. He cut Emma's zip ties, helped secure a harness around Diana, signaled to pull her up. Then he harnessed Emma. "How did you?" Emma started. "Got your text. Called sheriff, federal agents, everyone I could think of. We found Whitmore's men trying to leave, detain them. Boss called in every favor he had to get here this fast." Red's grin was fierce. "You're tougher than you look, Doc." They hauled Emma to the surface. Cole was there, pulling her into his arms with force that hurt, but she didn't care. "Jesus Christ," he said into her hair. "I thought I'd lost you." "Almost did." Emma was shaking. "Thomas Whitmore tried to kill us." "I know. Federal agents arrested him 10 minutes ago, him and his men. Diana's testimony plus the evidence on her phone, it's over, Emma. He's done." Emma pulled back to look at him. "It's really over. The criminal case against you will be dropped by morning. Whitmore's going to spend the rest of his life in federal prison." Cole cupped her face. "You're safe. Finally safe." Emma started crying, relief and shock and exhaustion all hitting at once. Cole held her while paramedics checked her vitals, while federal agents took statements, while the Montana night slowly gave way to dawn. Diana was taken to a hospital, then federal custody, witness protection in exchange for testimony against her father. Thomas Whitmore was led away in handcuffs, his empire crumbling, his power finally broken. And Emma, wrapped in blankets in the back of an ambulance, watched the sun rise over mountains that had nearly become her grave and felt something like peace beginning to take root. The fight was over. They'd won. The hospital kept Emma for observation, hypothermia, shock, minor lacerations from the mine shaft's rough walls. Cole refused to leave her side, sitting in the uncomfortable chair beside her bed through the night and into the next day. When Emma finally woke fully beyond the fragmented moments of paramedics and emergency room chaos, morning light filtered through sterile blinds, and Cole was asleep in the chair, head tilted at an angle that would give him a terrible crick in his neck. She watched him for a moment, this man who'd risked everything, who'd gotten her message, and mobilized an army who'd pulled her out of darkness, literal and metaphorical. Emma reached out, touched his hand. Cole woke instantly, eyes finding hers. "Hey," she said. Her voice was rough. "Hey, yourself." He moved to the bed, took her hand properly. "How are you feeling?" "Like I fell down a mine shaft and nearly drowned." "That's accurate." Almost smiled, but his eyes were serious. "Mummy, when I got your text and realized where you'd gone," his voice failed. "I'm sorry, I should have told you about Diana's call. I just thought, you thought you could handle it alone, I know." Cole squeezed her hand. "But you don't have to handle things alone anymore. That's what I'm trying to tell you." We're partners. That means we face danger together, or we don't face it at all. Even when facing it together means both of us could die. Especially then. His expression was fierce. I'd rather die with you than live without you. Is that clear? Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Very clear. A knock interrupted them. Margaret Chen entered, followed by a woman in a federal agent's suit. Dr. Carter, Margaret said. This is Special Agent Rivera, FBI. She has news. Agent Rivera pulled up a chair, opened a tablet. Dr. Carter, I'll be brief. Based on evidence recovered from Diana Whitmore's phone testimony from Thomas Whitmore's employees and forensic analysis of the documents used to frame you, the U.S. Attorney's Office is dropping all charges. The Boulder County DA has formally apologized. Your record will be expunged. Emma exhaled slowly. Just like that. Just like that. Thomas Whitmore is facing federal charges including conspiracy, fraud, witness, tampering, attempted murder, and about 15 other counts. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Rivera's expression softened. What he did to you was unconscionable. The Bureau takes these cases seriously. We'll do everything we can to help you rebuild your reputation. What about Diana? Ms. Whitmore is cooperating fully. She's entered witness protection, will testify against her father. In exchange, she receives immunity on the conspiracy charges. She was coerced, documented evidence shows years of abuse. She'll have her baby under federal protection, start a new life somewhere safe. Emma thought about Diana, trapped by her father's cruelty, finally finding courage to break free. I hope she finds peace. So do we, Rivera stood. Dr. Carter, you showed remarkable courage. If you ever want to discuss what happened in a formal setting, Trauma Counseling Victim Services, the Bureau can arrange that. Thank you, I'll think about it. After Rivera left, Margaret reviewed the legal aftermath. The university was already drafting a formal apology offering to reinstate Emma's position with full back pay. Several scientific journals had reached out wanting to publish her Mustang genetics research. The story of her frame-up and rescue had gone national. She was suddenly infamous in ways both good and terrible. You'll be fielding media requests for months, Margaret warned. I can help manage that if you want representation. Later, Emma said. Right now, I just want to go home. Define home, Margaret said carefully. Denver, the ranch. You have options now. Emma looked at Cole. The ranch, if that's okay. More than okay. Cole's hand tightened on hers. Always okay, Margaret smiled. Then I'll handle the media circus. You two focus on recovering. After she left, a doctor came to discharge Emma with instructions about rest, follow-up appointments, signs of delayed shock. Cole listened attentively, asked questions, promised to monitor everything. They drove back to the ranch in afternoon sun, the Montana landscape impossibly beautiful after the darkness of that mine shaft. Emma rolled down the window, breathed air that smelled of pine and snow and freedom. Red met them at the ranch, grinning. Doc, good to see you vertical. Good to be vertical. Emma hugged him, surprising them both. Thank you for everything. Just doing what needed doing. Red spat, but his eyes were suspiciously bright. Got some folks who want to see you. The ranch hands emerged from the barn. Frank, Luis, the others, all of them nodding respectfully. Word had spread. The scientist who'd been framed by Thomas Whitmore and survived had earned their respect in ways Emma didn't fully understand, but felt deeply grateful for. That evening, Cole made dinner while Emma rested on the couch wrapped in quilts despite the house's warmth. She was exhausted, but wired mind refusing to settle body, remembering the cold water and darkness. Cole brought her soup, sat beside her. Eat, you need calories. Emma managed a few spoonfuls, then set it aside. I keep thinking about what could have happened. If you hadn't gotten the text, if the signal had failed, if Red hadn't mobilized everyone so quickly. But I did. It didn't. He did. Bah, Cole took the soup bowl, set it on the table. Emma, you can't live in the what-ifs, trust me. I spent years drowning in them after my daughter died. It doesn't change anything except make you miserable. How did you stop? I met you. He said it simply. You showed up and reminded me that life keeps happening, whether you're paying attention or not. That hiding from pain means hiding from everything good too. Emma leaned against him, felt his solidity, his warmth. I don't know what happens now. My research is months behind. The Mustang's breeding season is almost over. The university wants me back, but I don't know if I wanted to go back. Everything feels Overwhelming, unreal. Cole was quiet for a moment. When I was in the hospital after my rodeo accident recovering from the surgeries, I remember thinking my old life was over. The person I'd been young, invincible, certain of my future, that guy died when Gravedigger broke me. I mourned him. But eventually I realized something endings make space for new beginnings. The man I became after the accident was different, yeah. Older, scarier, more careful, but also more capable of appreciating what I had. Is this your way of saying I'm having a new beginning? I'm saying you survived something that should have killed you. That changes you, but change isn't always bad. He kissed her temple. Whatever you want to do next, research, teaching, nothing at all, while I support it. This ranch is your home now if you want it to be. No pressure, no expectations. Just home. Emma felt something unlock in her chest. I want to finish the Mustang study. Not for the university, not for publication. For me, for James, for the herd. They deserve protection, even if it takes years. Then we'll finish it, together. They sat in the quiet evening, planning logistics, talking about equipment orders, discussing how to approach the remaining captures. It felt normal, purposeful, and Emma realized that normal was exactly what she needed. Work that mattered, routines that grounded her, a partner who understood both. Later in Cole's bed, she'd moved from the guest cabin to the main house. Without discussion, it simply happened. Emma traced the scars on his hip again. Tell me about hope, she said. What about it? You said it was terrifying. Is it still? Cole thought about that. Less now, hope's easier when you have evidence it's not wasted. You're here, alive. We won. That's evidence. What if we hadn't won? Then I'd still have fought for you. The outcome doesn't change the value of the fight. He turned to face her. Emma, I'm 61. I've lived most of my life. The years ahead, 10, 20 if I'm lucky, those are bonus time. I want to spend them building something good. With you. Even though I'm a disaster magnet who nearly got us both killed. Especially because you're brave enough to fight for things worth saving. That's not disaster. That's courage. Emma kissed him, and they made love slowly, carefully, like they were both precious, breakable things that had been glued back together. Afterward, Emma lay awake listening to Cole breathe, thinking about endings and beginnings, about the ways bodies healed and hearts learned to trust again. Outside, an owl called. The ranch settled into night, and Emma felt for the first time since the mine shaft like she might actually be safe. The rebuilding took weeks. Emma threw herself into the Mustang research with renewed focus. The breeding season was ending, but she could still collect data, observe late-season births, document herd dynamics. She and Cole rode out daily, capturing the last of the horses that needed genetic sampling, building the database that would become the foundation for conservation intervention. Red helped construct a more secure lab this time with proper lock security cameras and a guard dog that Red claimed was retired from military service. But Emma suspected was just a very large German shepherd named Duke who liked to sleep on her feet while she worked. The university offered Emma her position back with the apologies and a raise. She declined. Instead, she negotiated a research fellowship that would allow her to work independently, publishing under the university's affiliation, but operating from Montana. It was unconventional, but after the publicity surrounding her case, the university was desperate to maintain the relationship with their suddenly famous scientist. Several other institutions reached out: Berkeley, Cornell, even a European research institute. Emma politely declined them all. Montana was home now. Sarah Chen called one evening, tearful and apologetic. She was back in Denver, working a desk job, traumatized by the accident, but slowly healing. I'm sorry I left you alone out there, she said. I should have come back, helped with the research. You were recovering, Emma said gently. No one expects you to return to a place that traumatized you. But you did. You stayed and fought. I had reasons to stay. Emma glanced at Cole, who was cooking dinner. Sarah, you have to heal in your own way. That's not weakness. That's survival. They talked for an hour, and when Emma hung up, she felt a weight lift. Sarah would be okay. They'd probably never work together again, but the friendship would survive. James's widow called too unexpected and devastating. I heard what happened, she said. What Thomas Whitmore did. I'm so sorry you went through that. I'm sorry about James, Emma replied. He was brilliant and kind, and he deserved so much better than... He died doing work he loved with people he respected. Mrs. Voss's voice was steady. That's what I tell my daughters. Their father died in pursuit of something meaningful. You continuing that work that honors him more than any memorial service could. I'm going to finish the study for him. I know you will. Thank you, Dr. Carter. After that call, Emma cried grief that had been pushed down by survival finally surfacing. Cole held her, said nothing, just provided solid presence while she mourned properly for the colleague she'd lost. 6 weeks after the mine shaft incident, Emma woke up nauseous. She attributed it to stress, the lingering effects of trauma, irregular eating, exhaustion from rebuilding the research project. But the nausea persisted. 3 days later, she threw up her breakfast. Cole found her in the bathroom, pale and shaking. That's it, he said. We're going to the doctor. It's just stress. Emma, you were hypothermic, nearly drowned, spent hours in contaminated water. We're getting you checked out. Dr. Vasquez saw her the next day. Emma listed her symptoms, expecting diagnosis of delayed infection or PTSD-related physical manifestations. Instead, Vasquez smiled. Dr. Carter, when was your last period? Emma blinked. I don't know. Couple months I've been irregular because of stress. She stopped. Wait, you think I'm pregnant? Let's find out. The blood test took 15 minutes. Vasquez returned with results and an expression of delighted surprise. You're pregnant, about 8 weeks based on hormone levels. She pulled up more data. And Dr. Carter based on the HCG levels. I'm pretty sure it's twins. Emma's world tilted. Twins. We'll confirm with ultrasound, but yes, the levels suggest multiples. Vasquez set down her tablet. I know this is unexpected. Unexpected. Emma laughed, slightly hysterical. I've been drowning in mine shafts and fighting criminal charges and rebuilding my career. Pregnancy wasn't even on my radar. Well, it's on your radar now. Congratulations. You're going to be a mother. Emma drove back to the ranch in a daze. Pregnant. With twins. Cole's children, proof that the diagnosis that had shaped 8 years of his life had been catastrophically wrong. She found him in the barn working on a saddle. He looked up when she entered, saw her expression. What did the doctor say? Emma opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. Cole, I'm pregnant. He went very still. Pregnant. 8 weeks, and the doctor thinks it's twins. Cole set down the saddle carefully, like his hands weren't quite working right. Twins. The hormone levels suggest multiples. We'll confirm with ultrasound next week, but Emma's voice cracked. Cole, you're going to be a father of twins. He made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh, wasn't quite a... Then he crossed the barn in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Twins, he repeated. Jesus Christ, Emma, are you? How do you feel about this? Terrified, excited, completely unprepared? She pulled back to look at him. Cole, I'm 29. My career is just stabilizing. I'm barely recovering from nearly being murdered. I don't know if I'm ready to be a mother. No one's ever ready. My wife and I weren't ready when Emma was born. We figured it out. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. But this is your choice. Our choice. Whatever you want. I want this, Emma said. The certainty surprised her. I want our children. I want to build a family with you. It's terrifying and possibly insane, but I want it. Cole kissed her, then deep and desperate and full of everything words couldn't express. When they broke apart, he was crying openly, not bothering to hide it. I thought this would never happen, he said roughly. Spent 8 years believing I'd failed at the most basic thing, passing on my bloodline, creating a family. And now, his hand moved to her stomach, barely showing any sign yet. Now you've given me everything I thought was impossible. We did this together. Emma covered his hand with hers. Your stubbornness, my science, and apparently really good biological timing. Twins, Cole said again, like testing the word. Do twins run in your family? My grandmother was a twin. It's genetic on the mother's side, so yes, apparently I inherited the hyperovulation gene. Emma laughed. We're going to need a bigger house. We'll build one. Whatever you need. Nursery space for your lab, room for kids to grow. Cole's mind was clearly already racing ahead. We should get married before they're born. I want them to have my name, our family name, Cole. Emma stopped him. Are you proposing because you want to marry me or because I'm pregnant? He took her face in his hands. I'm proposing because I love you, because I want to spend every day I have left building a life with you. The pregnancy just makes it more urgent, but Emma, I'd want this anyway. Will you marry me? You don't have a ring. I'll get one, 20 if you want them, but answer the question. Emma looked at this man who'd saved her life, who'd fought for her, who'd given her hope when she had none. Yes, of course, yes. They kissed again, and somewhere in the barn rafters, a barn owl hooted approval, and Emma thought about how 6 months ago she'd been a lonely scientist driving into a blizzard, and now she was engaged to a Montana rancher pregnant with twins building a future that looked nothing like anything she'd planned and was somehow perfect anyway. The wedding happened fast. Cole wasn't interested in elaborate planning or waiting for perfect timing. We've both wasted enough time, he said. Let's just do this. Emma agreed. They chose a date 3 weeks out, enough time to arrange basics, but not enough for cold feet or second guessing. The ceremony would be small, intimate at the ranch. Red stood as Cole's best man, grumbling about having to wear a tie, but secretly pleased. Margaret Chen flew in to be Emma's witness, bringing legal documents that officially changed Emma's status from client to friend. The day arrived clear and cold, Montana March snow still on the peaks, but valley floors showing green. They set up chairs in the pasture where Emma had first seen the Mustang, heard mountains as backdrop, the whole landscape bearing witness. Emma wore a simple dress, cream-colored silk that hid her, barely showing pregnancy, and Cole wore his best suit, the one he'd worn to his daughter's funeral, and hadn't touched since. He looked like he'd stepped out of a Western movie, all-weather dignity and quiet strength. Judge Stone officiated, surprising everyone, but the judge had apologized privately to Emma for the way she'd handled the case, explaining that Whitmore's influence had extended even to the bench, but she'd done what she could within constraints. This was her way of making amends. The vows were simple. Cole spoke first, a voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. Emma, you came into my life when I'd given up on living. You showed me that hope isn't weakness and that second chances are real. I promise to stand with you through whatever comes, good, bad, impossible. I promise to be the partner you deserve and the father our children need. I promise to never stop fighting for us. Emma's turn. Cole, you saved my life before you even knew me. You taught me that courage isn't fearlessness. It's riding into blizzards because someone needs help. You showed me what it means to build something that lasts. I promise to face the future with you, to raise our family with love, and to never let you forget that you're worthy of every miracle that comes our way. Judge Stone smiled. By the power vested in me by the state of Montana, I now pronounce you married. You may kiss. Cole did thoroughly, and the small gathered crowd, ranch hands, local friends, a handful of scientists Emma had invited applauded. The reception was barn potluck. Everyone brought dishes. Red set up a sound system, and they danced under strings of lights as evening fell. It was casual, joyful, nothing like the elaborate wedding Diana Whitmore had been planning. Emma danced with Cole, his hand protective on her lower back where their children grew, and thought about the strange paths that led people to happiness. 6 months of hell, but worth it for this moment. Red toasted with whiskey, his speech short and gruff. Known Cole since he was too young to know better. Watched him survive things that would break most men. But I ain't seen him truly alive until now, to stubborn fools who don't know when to quit, and thank God for it. Margaret toasted too, to my client who became my friend. May your marriage be as resilient as your defense strategy. Laughter, music, dancing, simple food, and complex joy. Cole's hands never left Emma, touching her shoulder, her hand, her growing belly. Protective, possessive, grateful. As night deepened and guests began to leave, Emma and Cole walked to the paddock where the horses dozed. The Mustang mare they'd captured, first the pregnant one, had foaled weeks earlier, a healthy colt that now slept pressed against his mother's side. New life, Cole said softly, everywhere you look. We did that, protected them long enough to reproduce, to continue. You did that, your science, your determination. He turned to her. Emma Mitchell, God, I love saying that. Do you know what you have given me? Twins, apparently. She smiled. A future, a reason to care what happens tomorrow. His hand found hers. For 8 years I lived like I was already dead. You brought me back. You were never dead, just dormant, like your fertility waiting for the right conditions to regenerate. Is that your scientific explanation for love? Love's not scientific, it's miraculous. Emma leaned against him, like everything else about us. They stood in the darkness watching horses sleep and stars emerge, two people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances and somehow built something lasting. Inside the barn, the party continued, music and laughter floating on cold air. But out here, it was just them and the land and the impossible future they'd somehow made real. The pregnancy progressed. Emma worked through her first trimester nausea, documenting the Mustang herd's post-breeding season behavior, analyzing genetic data, writing papers that would establish the scientific foundation for long-term conservation. Cole hovered protective to the point of being overbearing until Emma threatened to banish him to the barn. You rode into blizzards and fell down mine shafts, not pregnant, he argued. Now you're carrying my children. I'm allowed to worry. You're allowed to worry quietly from a distance while I do my job. They compromised. Cole came on field observations but stayed back, letting Emma work, only intervening if she looked tired. It was sweet mostly, though Emma occasionally wanted to throw things at his overprotective head. At 12 weeks, they confirmed twins. Dr. Vasquez showed them the ultrasound, two distinct heartbeats, two tiny forms. Do you want to know the genders? She asked. Emma looked at Cole. Do we? I don't care what they are. Just want them healthy. One boy, one girl, Vasquez said. Fraternal twins. Cole's face transformed, pure joy, washing away the careful stoicism he usually maintained. A boy and a girl, Jesus. Have you thought about names? Vasquez asked. Emma, Cole said immediately. If it's a girl, after my daughter. Emma felt her throat tighten. And if you're okay with it, I'd like to name the boy Rafe, after Rafe Sutton. Cole looked at her, understanding. The man Diana loved. The man who deserved better, who should have lived to see his child born. Emma squeezed Cole's hand. Our son won't replace him, but maybe honoring his name means his story isn't completely tragedy. Rafe and Emma Mitchell, Cole said. Good, strong names. News of Diana reached them through federal channels. She'd given birth to a son, healthy, beautiful, no complications. She'd named him Raphael, started a new life in witness protection somewhere in the Midwest. The federal prosecutor handling Thomas Whitmore's case reported that Diana's testimony had been devastating. Years of abuse, coercion, forced complicity in criminal activities. The jury had needed less than 2 hours to convict. Thomas Whitmore was sentenced to 45 years federal prison. He'd die behind bars. Diana sent one message through her handler. Thank you for giving me courage to fight back. I hope you and Cole find happiness. You both deserve it. Emma carried that message like a talisman. Diana had been trapped, had made terrible choices, but in the end had chosen truth over family loyalty. That took strength. Emma respected deeply. At 6 months pregnant, Emma was huge. You're sure it's only twins? She asked Vasquez during a checkup. Definitely two. They're just healthy. Vasquez smiled. How are you feeling? Like I swallowed basketballs, plural. That's normal for twins. The good news is everything looks great. Heart rate's growth position. You're on track for a healthy delivery. And I can still work. Light work, yes. No more climbing into horse stalls or chasing Mustangs through mountains. Emma had already scaled back field operations, focusing on data analysis and paper writing from the ranch. The Mustang conservation study was nearly complete. Genetic profiles documented, breeding recommendations established, federal protection petitions filed. It would take years for bureaucracy to implement the changes, but the scientific foundation was solid. Cole had converted the ranch's north wing into a nursery, 2 cribs, rocking chair walls painted soft colors. He'd done most of the work himself, spending evenings building furniture, painting, creating a space for their children with the same careful attention he gave everything. Emma stood in the doorway one evening, watching him assemble a changing table, and felt overwhelmed by love for this man who approached fatherhood like sacred duty. You're going to be an amazing dad, she said. Cole looked up, smiled. I'm going to try. Make up for all the mistakes I made with Emma, my first Emma. Be present this time. Not working all the time, not missing moments. You did your best. My best wasn't good enough. She died thinking I didn't have time for her. His voice roughened. I won't make that mistake twice. Emma crossed the room, wrapped her arms around him from behind, difficult with her belly, but she managed. These children are lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one. He turned, pulled her close as her belly allowed. Two kids, a wife I don't deserve. Work that matters. It's more than I ever thought I'd have. You deserve all of it. Emma kissed him. Every bit. Emma went into labor on a Tuesday morning in late September. She'd been working on data analysis when the first contraction hit sharp, unmistakable. She looked at the clock, 7 a.m., called for Cole. He appeared instantly, saw her face. Is it time we need to go? The next hours were a blur, driving to Billings Hospital, getting checked in labor, progressing faster than expected. Cole stayed with her the entire time, holding her hand, breathing through contractions, being exactly the partner she needed. Durapata Vasquez delivered both babies. Emma Rose Mitchell arrived first, 6 pounds 2 ounces, screaming her indignation at the world. Rafe William Mitchell came 12 minutes later, 5 pounds 11 ounces quieter than his sister, but just as healthy. Cole held them both, one in each arm, tears streaming down his face. They're perfect, Emma. They're perfect. Emma, exhausted and euphoric, watched her husband cradle their children. This man who'd thought he'd never be a father, now overwhelmed by the reality of 2 tiny lives depending on him. We made them, she said softly. Impossible, but real. Miracles, Cole corrected. Every damn one of us. The first night was chaos, feeding schedules, diaper changes, the surreal experience of being responsible for 2 tiny humans. But somewhere around 3 a.m., when both babies finally slept and Cole and Emma sat in the hospital room watching them breathe, Emma felt peace settle. This was it, the future they'd fought for. Messy, exhausting, perfect. What do we do now, she asked. We go home. We figure it out. We survive on no sleep and questionable decisions. Cole smiled. We build a family. Just like that. Just like that. Going home was an adventure. The ranch hands had decorated the entrance, blue and pink balloons, hand-painted welcome signs, flowers everywhere. Red stood on the porch trying to look gruff, but failing completely when he saw the babies. Well, he said, they're tiny. Most babies are, Emma pointed out. Can I? He gestured awkwardly. Cole handed him Rafe. Red held the baby like he was handling explosives, expression, transforming into something soft Emma had never seen before. Hey there, little ma, Red said quietly. Welcome to Montana. It's a hell of a place, but you got good people looking out for you. Rafe yawned, unimpressed. The first weeks were brutal: sleep deprivation, constant feeding, learning to care for 2 infants simultaneously. Emma had read books, taken classes, thought she was prepared. She wasn't. Nobody was, but they managed. Cole proved surprisingly competent. Years of ranching had taught him patience and the ability to function on minimal sleep. He did midnight feedings, changed diapers without complaint, sang old Western songs to fussy babies. Emma pumped breast milk, worked one-handed while holding a baby, wrote grant proposals during stolen moments of peace. Her career hadn't ended, it had just become more complicated. At 6 weeks, they took the twins to meet the Mustang herd. Emma strapped them into carriers, Rafe on Cole's chest. Emma rose on hers, and they rode out to the observation point. The herd grazed peacefully, the mare who'd foaled first now teaching her colt to navigate steep terrain. Look, Emma told her daughter, those are the horses your father and I fought to save. Someday you'll understand why. Emma Rose grabbed her mother's finger, held tight. We did good work here, Cole said. All of us, you, me, Red, even the horses themselves. This herd's going to survive, maybe thrive. Because we didn't give up. Emma looked at him. Even when it was hard, when Whitmore nearly destroyed us, we kept fighting. That's what you do for things that matter. Cole adjusted Rafe, who was falling asleep against his chest. You taught me that. And they sat in the afternoon sun watching horses and holding babies. And Emma thought about legacy, how it wasn't just bloodlines and genetics, but the work you did and the lives you touched and the future you protected for generations you'd never meet. The Mustangs would breed next spring. Some would carry stronger genetics thanks to Emma's intervention recommendations. The population would stabilize, grow, survive. And someday when Rafe and Emma Rose were old enough, they'd learn about the herd, about the fight to save them, about how their parents met in a blizzard and built something lasting from disaster. The twins' first birthday arrived faster than seemed possible. The ranch held a party low-key by celebration standards but massive by Emma's reckoning. Friends, colleagues, ranch hands, the community that had rallied around them. Cake and presents and chaos. Rafe was walking, stumbling, really chasing Duke the dog around with single-minded determination. Emma Rose was more cautious, holding furniture, studying the world with her father's thoughtful gaze. Emma watched them, felt her heart swell with love, so fierce it was almost painful. Cole appeared beside her, handed her a glass of wine. "What are you thinking?" "That a year ago I was 7 months pregnant, terrified I'd be a terrible mother." Emma sipped. "And that I'm still terrified, but in a different way. Not that I'll fail them, that the world will be too hard, too cruel. The world is hard, but they'll have us. They'll have this." Cole gestured at the ranch, the mountains, the community gathered. "They'll grow up knowing they're loved, that their parents fought for them before they were born. That's foundation enough. When did you get wise?" "Somewhere between the mine shaft and midnight feedings." He kissed her temple. "Emma, look what we built. 2 kids, a ranch, a herd of horses that's going to survive because you wouldn't quit. That's legacy. That's everything." Red appeared, Rafe in his arms. "Boss, your son just tried to eat horse feed. Might want to work on that." Cole took Rafe, who protested, leaving the excitement. "Kid's got adventurous taste." "He's got your stubbornness," Emma corrected, "and your refusal to listen to reason." Cole smiled. Poor kid never had a chance. They stood together, Cole holding Rafe, Emma, scooping up Emma Rose Red, hovering like an anxious grandfather watching their community celebrate. And Emma thought about the Western story that Cole's daughter had once loved the marshal who rode into danger because duty demanded it. Cole had ridden into a blizzard to save a stranger. That stranger had given him back his future. And now they stood here, surrounded by the life they'd built from impossibility. "What are you going to tell them?" Emma asked quietly. "When they're old enough to ask about how we met." "The truth," Cole said, "that I was broken and you were lost, and somehow we found each other anyway. That their mother is the bravest person I've ever known. That love doesn't fix everything, but it makes the fight worthwhile." That's a heavy story for kids. They'll be able to handle it. They're Mitchell kids now, tough as nails, stubborn as hell, brave enough to face anything. He looked at her, just like their mother. Emma kissed him, awkward, with children in their arms, but perfect anyway. The party continued around them, music and laughter, and the simple joy of people who'd survived hard things celebrating good ones. The Montana sun tracked west, painting mountains gold, and the Mustang herd grazed in distant meadows, protected and thriving. And Emma thought, this is what redemption looks like. Not erasure of the past, not forgetting pain, but building a future that honored it, that took the broken pieces and made something beautiful anyway. Cole had spent 8 years believing his story was over. Emma had nearly died in a mine shaft. And yet here they stood alive together, parents to impossible children, protectors of a herd that had almost been lost. The wind carried the scent of pine and snow and wild grasses. Somewhere a horse whinnied. Rafe laughed at something only he could see. Emma Rose grabbed her mother's hair and held on. And Cole Mitchell, rancher father, husbandman, who'd learned that second chances were real, looked at his family and knew with bone-deep certainty that every painful step that had led him here had been worth it. Emma met his eyes, saw her own gratitude reflected back. They'd survived. They'd built something lasting. And that was everything. Epilogue. 3 years later, Cole stood on the ridge at sunrise, watching the Mustang herd graze in the valley below. 60 animals now, population growing, genetic diversity improving, thanks to the careful management protocol Emma had established. The Bureau of Land Management had finally implemented her recommendations. The herd was protected, monitored, thriving. Behind him, he heard voices, his children arguing with the passionate intensity only 3-year-olds could manage. "Mine," Rafe shouted. "No, mine," Emma Rose countered. Cole turned to see them fighting over a toy horse, both red-faced with indignation. Emma, his wife, sat on a blanket, watching with amused exasperation, one hand on her very pregnant belly. They'd been surprised when the pregnancy test came back positive 6 months ago. "Again," Emma had said, "Cole, we're going to run out of bedrooms." "We'll build more," he'd replied, and he was already planning the addition. This one was a girl. They'd name her Sarah after the research assistant who'd survived the blizzard accident and had recently returned to Montana, finding peace in the landscape that had once terrified her. Cole walked back to the blanket, scooped up both twins. Stop fighting. There are 50 toy horses in that house. Share. But I want that one, Rafe insisted. Of course you do. Cole sat settling, one child on each knee. Let me tell you a story about some real horses. See those down there? Both children turned to look at the Mustang herd. Those horses were almost gone, Cole said. Nobody cared about them. But your mother, he looked at Emma. She believed they were worth saving. So she fought to protect them, even when it was hard, even when people told her it was impossible. Like in your story, Emma Rose asked. The one about the blizzard. Exactly like that. Sometimes the most important things are the hardest to save. But if you keep fighting, keep believing, impossible things become real. Like us, Rafe asked. Especially like you. Cole kissed both their heads. You two are proof that miracles exist. Emma smiled from the blanket. You're getting sappy in your old age, Mitchell. I'm 64. I'm allowed sappy. He set the twins down. Go play. But Cher or Duke gets all the toys. The children ran off, temporary peace established. Cole sat beside Emma, hand on her belly where their third child grew. You okay, he asked. Tired, enormous, wondering why we thought 3 kids was a good idea. Because we're ambitious idiots. That tracks. Emma leaned against him. Cole, do you ever think about how different things would be if you hadn't ridden out that day? If you'd ignored my radio call? Every damn day. He kissed her hair. And every day I'm grateful I didn't. You gave me a future I thought was impossible. These kids, this life, it's more than I ever deserved. You deserve all of it? Stop arguing. Yes, ma'am. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play, watching the horses graze, watching the sun climb over mountains that had witnessed their entire journey. Red appeared from the barn, leading a horse. Boss, you still want to teach those kids to ride today? Yeah. Let's start with the basics. They're ready. Cole helped Emma up, and they walked toward the barn together. Family intact, future, secure, legacy, being written with every ordinary, extraordinary day. And somewhere in the high country, a young Mustang colt descended from the mare Emma had saved 3 years ago, tested his legs on steep terrain, learning to navigate the wilderness his ancestors had roamed for over a century. The herd would survive, the family would grow, the land would endure. And the sterile mountain man who'd thought his story was over learned that sometimes the best chapters come after you've accepted the ending. Cole Mitchell had been given a second chance. He'd built a life worth living, and that was the only legacy that mattered.